Chapter 726. Obviously, ever since Tong Tian learned that Yi Xian was using strength to prove his Tao, he had some doubts about Yi Xian being the seventh saint of heaven. Furthermore, Niwa had personally visited him, hoping that he could let the Jie sect leave the celestial court. This was because the ancient demon court would fight the celestial court sooner or later. After all, it was impossible for there to be two celestial courts in this world. However, the sky-piercing school was hesitating. He was hesitating about whether or not Yi Xian could become a saint. Although Yi Xian walked the path of using strength to prove his Tao, he could still cultivate the method of becoming a saint through virtue. After all, his senior brother Lao Tzu had started cultivating the three corpses technique. But didn't he change it to merit saint method later? This was the reason why the Jie sect was still in the celestial court. After all, Tong Tian was still not sure if Yi Xian was the seventh saint. Sect Master, are you afraid that the celestial court and the ancient demon court will fight, and the disciples of the Jie sect will be wiped out? Yi Xian said softly. Sigh. Tong Tian sighed. He looked at Yi Xian through the holy light and said, Yi Xian, you should know that my senior brother Yuanshi has already let the Chan sect join the ancient demon court. Moreover, the Eastern Emperor Tai and Di Jun are the celestial emperors of the demon race. They also have the support of my junior sister Niwa. If you don't become a saint, the 33rd celestial court can only disappear. Niwa Yuanshi? Yi Xian muttered to himself. A smile gradually appeared on his face. Then he looked at Tong Tian and said, I understand. In that case, let the Jie sect leave the celestial court. After saying that, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and strode out of the aquamarine palace. However, this also stunned Tong Tian. As he waved his palm and fingers, he blocked Yi Xian's path. Yi Xian, are you really going to give up on the disciples of the Jie sect? Tong Tian frowned. Yi Xian did not turn around. He only said in a low voice, Sect Master, it's not that I, Yi Xian, have given up on Yi Xian. You should know what kind of person I, Yi Xian, am. I can't tolerate any sand in my eyes. You are afraid that the Jie sect will be destroyed in the battle of the celestial court. And I, Yi Xian, can't tolerate people with disloyalty. As Yi Xian finished speaking, he walked forward again. From the beginning to the end, he did not look back at Tong Tian. Yi Xian, give up the celestial court. My junior sister and senior brother have already taken action. The rise of the ancient demon court is unstoppable. Even if I continue to support you, you are no match for the Eastern Emperor Tai and the others. Niwa Yuanshi? Yi Xian was still walking forward, but his voice was murmuring and cold. Sect Master, don't worry. If I, Yi Xian, become a saint one day, the first people I will kill will be them. You? As Yi Xian's words entered his ears, Tong Tian was stunned. He looked at Yi Xian's back and was extremely shocked. Kill a saint? It was a simple word, but it contained a heaviness that was as heavy as the heavens. Tong Tian did not dare to imagine it, nor had he ever imagined it. Sages were immortal and immortal. If sages could really be killed, he would have been defeated and had to run away when he fought against the four sages. His life was not in danger at all. However, Tong Tian did not expect Yi Xian to be so arrogant. He actually wanted to kill a saint. It was simply a fantasy. It's pitiful and lamentable. I, Yi Xian, really did not expect that Tong Tian, who dared to fight the four saints back then, would actually compromise. It seems that even after being tempered by time, Sect Master's pride in the past has already turned to nothing. Yi Xian sneered contemptuously. His voice reached Tong Tian's ears. It was also at this moment that he finally left Green Turing Palace. However, Tong Tian, who was behind him, instantly fell into a daze because of his words. Beg for justice? The Grand Master of Heaven paused for a moment as his voice trembled. His eyes were filled with confusion as he looked in the direction Yi Xian disappeared in. His eyes revealed an extremely complicated expression. I, Tong Tian, am compromising? Tong Tian clenched his fists. The holy light around him was extremely chaotic. Extremely terrifying fluctuations rippled out until it became silent. It caused the entire Green Turing Palace to fall into an indescribable pressure. After leaving Green Turing Palace, Yi Xian crossed the Sea of Stars and returned to the celestial court. He had come to Green Turing Palace today to see Tongtian's attitude. Unfortunately, what disappointed him was that Tongtian was no longer as arrogant as before. There was no need for him to continue talking to Tongtian. If a person lost his drive, he would only be reduced to mediocrity. Even saints were no exception. Tongtian was no longer as valiant as before. Clearly, the investiture of the gods back then had a great impact on him. Although Yi Xian was very disappointed in the Grandmaster of Heaven, he didn't blame him. This was because the other party had helped him too much. If he didn't have the help of the Grandmaster of Heaven, it would have been extremely difficult for him to grow to his current level. 9 Tribulations of the Heavenly Tao. As long as I can pass through the first 3 tribulations, my cultivation will be comparable to Nuwa and Yuanshi. However, I have just become a sage to be. I still have to face the first tribulation. I'm afraid it will take a very long time. Yi Xian frowned and muttered. When the Myriad Demon Conference began 10,000 years later, the 33rd Heaven Celestial Court would directly oppose the Ancient Demon Court. Even if Yi Xian wanted to delay the war with the Ancient Demon Court, he should not forget that the Ancient Demon Court would never allow the Celestial Court to exist. Moreover, there was a huge problem now. The news that he had obtained the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor could not be hidden for long. The Emperor of Feng Du would not be willing to accept it. He had to face it personally. However, during this trip to the Aquamarine Palace, Yi Xian did not tell Tongtian that the 7th Hongmeng Immortal Vapor was in his hands. Perhaps if he told this news to Tongtian's attitude would change. However, this was not the result that Yi Xian wanted. This was because he walked the path of proving Tao through strength. He had not decided whether to become a sage through merit. At this time, Yi Xian could only put everything aside for the time being. He had to return to the Celestial Court and go into seclusion to understand the magical effects of the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor. Only then could he decide what to do next. At the same time in the Ancient Demon Court, Dong Huangtai sat on the throne of the Celestial Emperor. Emperor Jun stood side by side with him. Below them, there were thousands of ancient demons standing on both sides. At a glance, it was extremely grand and boundless. It was extremely awe-inspiring. Is Feng Du telling the truth? Dong Huangtai asked with a frown. We don't know if it's true or not. However, this person has made a great oath of the heart demon. Moreover, he does not have the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor on him. Although he is very suspicious, if Yi Xian has really obtained the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor, you must take it back from him, Emperor Jun said firmly. Celestial Emperor, the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor is of great importance. We should quickly send troops to Yi Xian to see if the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor is on him. Count of Wind stood out from the crowd and said directly to the 2 celestial emperors. Chapter 727. Heavenly Emperor, the primordial violet qi is of great importance. We should quickly send troops to Yi Xian and see if the primordial violet qi is on him. Count Feng walked out from the crowd and directly spoke to the 2 heavenly emperors. Count of Wind is right. Let's destroy the celestial court first. If the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor is not with Yi Xian, then it must be with Feng Du. When the time comes, the ancient demon court will send troops to the underworld to take back the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor, Count of Rain said solemnly. As the 2 spoke, the ancient demons all chimed in. However, Dong Huangtai seemed to be deep in thought and did not make a decision immediately. Brother, what do you think? Emperor Jun asked. As Emperor Jun spoke, the ancient demons fell silent again. Everyone's eyes were focused on Dong Huangtai. Obviously, this matter was up to him to decide. Let's put this matter aside for now. Don't act rashly, Dong Huangtai said after 3 breaths. He had finally made a decision. Why? Emperor Jun's expression changed slightly. The Demons' Conference has not started yet. Billions of demons have not submitted. We can only wait for the conference to start, and for Nuwa to come to the Ancient Demon Court. Only then can the Ancient Demon Court legitimately become the master of the 3 realms. Moreover, all of you should know that regardless of whether it's Yi Xian, who obtained the primordial violet qi, or Feng Du, who obtained the primordial violet qi, Even if the primordial violet chi is in the hands of one of them, it's impossible for them to become a saint within 10,000 years. Now that the ancient demon court has been established, if we send troops to Yi Xian and the underworld now, it's not justifiable. We can only wait until the demons' conference is over, and the ancient demon court regains control of the three realms. At that time, we can take advantage of the situation. Dong Huangtai's mind was clear. He was not blinded by the Hong Meng immortal vapor. Obviously, this was the best choice for the ancient demon court. You're right, big brother. I was too anxious. Emperor Jun suddenly came to his senses. Not far away. It's really not far away. 10,000 years will pass in the blink of an eye. After the myriad demon meet begins, the demon clan will regain control of the world. Everyone will have to submit to the ancient demon court. Dong Huangtai placed his hands behind his back and looked at the world in all directions. His eyes flickered with a bright demonic light. The ancestral land of the sorcerer tribe in the chaotic void. 6 stalwart figures sat in the air with their legs crossed. Beams of terrifying ancestor Magus divine light rose into the sky. Zhurong, is what you said true? The Hong Meng immortal vapor has really appeared? Ancestor of sorcerer Dongfang Mu frowned and asked Zhurong. That's right. The primordial violet vapor has indeed appeared. I just don't know if it's in the hands of Yi Xian or Fengdu. Zhurong nodded gently. The Hong Meng immortal vapor is of great importance. It's related to the birth of the 7th sage. Although the Wu tribe has no fate with the position of sage, it can't fall into the hands of others easily. Ancestor of sorcerer Xian Ming said in a low voice. Yi Xian has killed tens of thousands of people of the Wu tribe. Why don't we go to the celestial court in person? First, we can seek justice from him. Second, we can see if the Hong Meng immortal vapor is with him. Ancestor of sorcerer Chang Liang Lei was the most easily angered. At this moment he was roaring. His body was flashing with ancestor sorcerer divine thunder, and the boundless void was faintly collapsing. No, the ancient demon court is about to start the myriad demon meet. They are the biggest enemy of the Wu tribe. If we start a war with Yi Xian first, the Wu tribe will have to pay a certain price even though Yi Xian is no match for us. Wouldn't we be letting Dong Huangtai and Emperor Jun take advantage of us? Tianhao, the ancestor of sorcerer of wind, had the most easygoing temperament. He could be said to be unparalleled in wisdom. At this moment he clearly pointed out the hidden dangers. It's a pity that only the 6 of us ancestors of sorcerer have appeared. If we can gather the 12 ancestors of sorcerer, who will the Wu tribe fear in this world? Zhurong let out a long sigh. A hint of unwillingness flashed through his eyes. Back then, you and Gonggong were not on good terms. The battle between the two of you was earth-shattering. You even knocked down Mount Buzhou. This directly caused the Wu tribe to have internal and external troubles. It also made the other brothers feel sad. If Dijiang and the Candle Dragon were here, why would we have to fear so many things? Ancestor of sorcerer Tianhao sighed. Dijiang and the Candle Dragon possess the power of space and time. It's a pity that their whereabouts are unknown. However, I think when the myriad demon meet starts, the two of them will definitely come back when they hear the news. By then, the Wu tribe will have no enemies to fear, Gomang said softly. The few ancestors of sorcerer sat cross-legged in the void. From their conversation, it could be heard that the 12 ancestors of sorcerer of ancient times were not united. There were also unknown disputes among them. The ancient demon court and the Wu tribe feared each other. This gave Yi Xian a chance to breathe. Otherwise, if the two terrifying forces came to the celestial court, it would be difficult for Yi Xian to deal with them. At the same time, a shocking news that caused the 3 realms to be in chaos spread. It completely ignited the fuse of the 3 realms, and made the living beings of the 3 realms feel an extremely oppressive atmosphere. The primordial violet vapor had appeared. A few simple words were so heavy that it made people unable to breathe. It made many people go crazy because of this news. The news came from the Emperor of Fengdu of the underworld. According to him, the primordial violet vapor was in Yi Xian's possession. Anyone who wanted to get the primordial violet vapor should go to the celestial court and ask for it from Yi Xian. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. This news was like a heavy bomb that caused the three realms to be in chaos. Many sage-to-be figures came out one after another to inquire about the primordial violet vapor. As the saying went, the truth could not be concealed. Moreover, the Emperor of Fengdu added fuel to the fire. Many sage-to-be went to the underworld and learned everything about the primordial violet vapor from him. Yi Xian became the target of public criticism, and the living beings of the three realms focused their attention on him. Of course, as the instigator, the Emperor of Fengdu did not have it easy, because the other sage-to-be were not stupid. They even suspected that the primordial violet vapor was in his possession. Although the Emperor of Fengdu was badly battered, he had already smashed a broken jar. Since he could not get the primordial violet vapor, then Yi Xian should not think about getting it either. He wanted to kill Yi Xian with the help of the sage-to-be, so that he could vent the hatred in his heart. The underworld, the 18 levels of hell. The souls of the dead were wailing, and the chilly wind was bleak. There were also the angry roars of demons mixed with a murderous aura that made people feel extremely terrified. Even in such a terrifying illusion, a Buddha light bloomed in the depths of the 18 levels of hell. A bodhisattva with a peaceful face was reciting Buddhist scriptures in a low voice. Master, the primordial violet vapor has appeared. Are you really indifferent? Di Ting was the spiritual beast under Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. It was a unique spiritual beast in the world. Its spiritual ears could hear everything. Its ability was definitely unique in the three realms. The chanting stopped. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva placed his palms together. He sat cross-legged on the golden lotus and slowly opened his eyes. However, there was no fluctuation in his eyes. Chapter 728. As long as hell is not empty, I swear not to become a Buddha. That was my great wish all those years ago, and also my path to sainthood. It's just that I don't know if the primordial violet vapor is in the hands of Fengdu or Yi Xian. I'm afraid neither of them would give it to me even if I ask for it. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva sighed. Master, I've used my divine ability to listen to the movements of the three realms. The Emperor of Fengdu does not have the primordial violet vapor, and it seems that it should be in the hands of Yi Tiandi. With your current cultivation, even Yi Xian would not be your match if you forcefully take it. The Harkin said. Amitabha. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva raised his Buddhist name high and said with a sorrowful expression, that celestial emperor Yi used to be a little immortal to become a sage-to-be today. He's not as simple as you think. Even though I've cultivated Buddhism to the highest level, I'm not sure I can get the Hong Meng immortal vapor from him. Moreover, I'm a Buddhist. I can't steal from him. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva said softly. However, the primordial violet vapor is the key to sainthood. I can't give it up either. It's time to meet Yi Tiandi. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva murmured softly. He did not do anything, but a ring of Buddhist light bloomed around him. A monk in white cassock separated from his body, and he looked exactly like him. Amitabha. The white-robed monk chanted the Buddhist name, and the door to the earth immortal realm opened. As he put his palms together and strolled in, he disappeared from the 18 layers of hell. Underworld, unholy sea of blood. The sea of blood was surging, and the sinister winds of the world were howling violently on both sides of the sea of blood. Streaks of blood were wreaking havoc in the sky, and there were untold numbers of blood shadows bobbing in the sea of blood, with eerie laughter echoing from time to time. The two murderous weapons were called Yuan Tu and Avici. They were killing swords, the most powerful killing weapons below the 4 immortal slaying swords. Even a demi-saint who was slain by these two swords would face the danger of death. The Yuan Tu sword and Avici sword floated above the blood sea. The Nether River Patriarch sat cross-legged in the void, his body shrouded in blood-red light. He did not speak or move, but the aura around him was oppressive and intimidating. You are only one step away from becoming a saint. This item should belong to you. Shiva quietly appeared and bowed to Nether River Patriarch. Hong Meng Purple Chi has appeared. You are only one step away from becoming a saint. This item should be yours. Haha. Suddenly, the Nether River Patriarch laughed out loud. His laughter caused the Nether Blood Sea to churn violently. He stood up at that moment, and an extremely terrifying aura bloomed around him. I've asked Fengdu before. According to him, The primordial violet vapor is with Yi Xian. I don't think he's lying. It seems like I have to go to the celestial court personally to meet Yi Xian, Ancestor Nether River said solemnly. With your cultivation, even a saint would not be able to kill you. Who among the pre-saints could be your opponent? The Hong Meng immortal chi will definitely belong to you. Shiva flattered. As long as the blood sea did not dry up, Nether River would not die. This was not just a saying. It was an extremely terrifying thing. Among the pre-saints, the Nether River Patriarch was definitely one of the strongest. His strength was not reflected in his cultivation. In terms of cultivation alone, he was slightly inferior to Dijun. The most terrifying thing about the Nether River Patriarch was that he could not be killed. He was an immortal existence. Even if a saint wanted to kill him, it would be a very troublesome matter. Only by destroying the Nether Blood Sea could the Nether River Patriarch die. This was because the Nether Blood Sea was his origin. It could be said that the Nether Blood Sea was him, and he was the Nether Blood Sea. The Nether Blood Sea was formed by the tainted blood of the great god Pangu, and the Nether River Patriarch was born from it. He was born extremely powerful, and was an extremely difficult person to deal with. Even the various forces did not dare to offend him. Rumble. On this day, the Nether Blood Sea was overturning. The Nether River Patriarch walked out from it. This was the first time he walked out of the Nether Blood Sea in countless years, and truly appeared in the three realms. The world was in chaos, and the pre-saints had appeared. It was extremely difficult to see a pre-saint in the three realms. However, when the news of the Hong Meng immortal vapor's appearance spread, many pre-saints appeared in the world. This also proved how important the Hong Meng immortal vapor was to the pre-saints. Outside the 33rd heaven, under the Bodhi tree, the two saints of the west, Yuanshi Tianzuan of the Hollow Jade Palace, Lao Tzu of the Eight Visions Palace, Tong Tian of the Aquamarine Palace, and Her Highness Nuwa of the Nuwa Palace. The six saints were all watching. They were heavenly path saints, and had a vague feeling that the seventh heavens will saint was about to appear. However, they did not know who this person was. However, the appearance of the Hong Meng immortal vapor made the six saints understand that the great calamity of the world was about to begin. Because the Hong Meng immortal vapor had appeared at this moment, and the shamans and demons had also appeared, a massacre was unavoidable. The seventh heavens will saint was about to appear, and the other saints could not easily interfere. If any of their decisions resulted in bad karma with the seventh heavens will saint, it was definitely not the result they wanted. The 33rd Celestial Court, in front of the southern heavenly gate, thousands of auspicious clouds surged. Shen Gongbao carried the celestial ending sword on his back, and behind him were many immortals from the Jia sect. At this moment, all of them were standing in front of the southern heavenly gate. However, Shen Gongbao's expression was extremely gloomy, and there was a hint of guilt in his eyes. Yi Xian was dressed in black, and his gray hair fell behind his head. He did not wear the Celestial Emperor's battle robe, and his attire was very casual. This was his usual attire, and he did not want to change it. The old minister is ashamed to face the Celestial Emperor. Shen Gongbao looked ashamed. He was bowing to Yi Xian because today, he was going to lead the immortals from the Jia sect away from the Celestial Court. This was also the meaning of the Tongtian's message. The Myriad Demon Conference was about to begin, and the ancient demon court regained control of the three realms. The first thing they had to deal with was the Celestial Court. With the strength of the 33rd Celestial Court, they were no match for the ancient demon court. And if the Jia sect continued to follow Yi Xian, their orthodoxy would probably collapse. There is no banquet that lasts forever in the world. It is human nature to meet and part. Go. Yi Xian's expression was calm, and his voice was calm. Ever since he returned to the Celestial Court, he had directly passed down the Celestial Emperor's decree to the three realms. From then on, the Jia sect and the Celestial Court had nothing to do with each other, which led to today's parting. Shen Gongbao slowly removed the celestial slashing sword and offered it with both hands. He said in a sorrowful voice, "Before I left, the sect master asked me to hand the celestial slashing sword to you. This can also allow you to..." Unfortunately, before Shen Gongbao could finish, Yi Xian directly pushed the celestial slashing sword back and interrupted him at this moment. The celestial slashing sword is the most precious treasure of the Jie sect. I can't accept it. Tell the sect master that I appreciate his kindness. Yi Xian will definitely repay the favor that Yi Xian owed him in the past, Yi Xian said softly. Sigh. Shen Gongbao sighed. He knew that Yi Xian would never accept the celestial slashing sword. This also made him bow to Yi Xian again. He wanted to say something to Yi Xian, but he couldn't say it. Chapter 729. Take care, Celestial Emperor. We're leaving. Thousands of words could only be condensed into these 8 words. Shen Gongbao's face was pale as if he had aged a lot in an instant. He called out to the immortals of the Jie sect and rode an auspicious cloud down to the lower world. It was as if they would never meet again after this farewell. Your Majesty, if you want them to stay, they might not really leave. Venus Taibai sighed. It was obvious that the immortals of the Jie school had great respect for Yi Xian in the past 100,000 years. If it wasn't for Yi Xian, the Jie school wouldn't have been able to rise again. This separation wasn't what they wanted. If Yi Xian really did ask them to stay, perhaps half of them would be able to stay in the heavenly court. With a thought, all rivers and mountains have feelings. With a thought gone, the world has no heart. Fate comes together, fate disperses. Let all of this go with the wind. Yi Xian murmured to himself. No one knew what he was thinking. A gentle breeze blew, causing his hair to flutter in the wind. At this moment, he suddenly turned around and returned alone. Bullfighting Palace. The palace gates were tightly shut. There was no one within 10,000 miles. With Bullfighting Palace as the center, there was no one within 10,000 miles. This was because Yi Xian had issued a decree that he would be in seclusion for a period of time. No one was allowed to disturb him. Inside Bullfighting Palace, the palace had no roof. Stars filled the sky. Strands of starlight fell on Yi Xian's body, making him look untainted. He gave off an ethereal temperament. Buzz. The chaotic fog sealed the sky and locked the earth. Yi Xian's hands formed a seal. He directly covered the entire Bullfighting Palace with a radius of 10,000 miles. No aura leaked out. When Yi Xian did all this, he sat cross-legged in Bullfighting Palace. When he waved his hand, the primordial violet qi appeared in his hand. This made him look at it. The key to becoming a saint. A pre-saint coveted it. If there was anything in the world that a pre-saint would risk his life to obtain, then the primordial violet qi would definitely be ranked first. Nothing could compare to it. The primordial violet qi floated in Yi Xian's palm. It was emitting a faint purple light. There were also strands of Tao circulating within it. It gave off a mysterious and hazy feeling. But no matter how much Yi Xian sensed the primordial violet qi in his hand, he could not feel anything different about it. Only the aura within it was obscure and gave him a strange feeling. Bind. Suddenly, Yi Xian formed a seal with both of his hands. A bit of primal chaos mist appeared at the tip of his finger and directly struck towards the primordial violet qi, causing it to undergo an extremely miraculous change. Buzz. The void swayed and rippled. The primordial violet qi roiled and gradually became hazy. The primordial violet qi turned into immortal runes and jumped in the void. Heavenly Tao Law. Yi Xian's expression froze as he looked at the scene before him. He muttered to himself, but before he could recover from his shock, the immortal runes instantly shot towards the center of his brows and fused into the center of his brows. Rumble. Something miraculous happened. When the immortal runes fused into Yi Xian's glabella, the indestructible true spirit in his spiritual sea spun violently. The immortal runes covered his indestructible true spirit, causing his body to undergo a terrifying change. A strand of sacred light spread out from his body. The sacred light was majestic and gradually covered his body. In less than 3 breaths, he was completely submerged in the purple sacred light. A strand of sacred might rippled out from Yi Xian's body. The heavenly Tao Law in the void was suppressed. An extremely terrifying aura burst out from Yi Xian's body. It was as if he had turned into a saint at this moment. He had a supreme sacred might that could cover the heavens and earth. It was unimaginable and hard to imagine. The primordial violet qi seemed to have turned Yi Xian into a saint. It gave him a supreme majesty that was not inferior to the 6 great saints. Just the leakage of his aura caused the heavens and earth to distort slightly. At the same time, Yi Xian's consciousness fell into a mysterious space. When he opened his eyes, he saw heavenly Tao immortal runes. Although he did not recognize these runes, he could understand their meaning. The heavens chanted, and the heavenly Tao law shook. The deafening sound of the heavenly Tao echoed in Yi Xian's ears. His eyes were slightly dazed, and he did not recover for a long time. Rebuild the heavens and earth, and you can become a saint. Like the morning bell and evening drum, like a thunderclap, a deafening sound came from the purple space, instantly waking Yi Xian up. Who's talking? Yi Xian's eyes were cold. He kept looking around the purple space, but there was nothing around him. There were no living creatures at all. Only a large number of heavenly Tao immortal runes hovered around him. Heavenly Tao thunder, the path to becoming a saint. Yi Xian muttered to himself. He gradually calmed down, and seemed to understand where he was. This should be the space of the primordial violet qi. It contained the heavenly Tao immortal runes. It seemed to be describing the true meaning of becoming a saint. It was extremely mysterious, but it made people feel that the path to becoming a saint was right in front of them. My cultivation. Suddenly, Yi Xian examined himself. He found that he was emitting a sacred light. This sacred light was very similar to the sacred light on Tongtian and Nuwa. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Yi Xian felt that his cultivation was rising steadily. In just a dozen breaths, he had entered an extremely terrifying realm. Power, endless power, power that could destroy everything. It had never happened before. Yi Xian had never felt that he was so powerful that he was afraid of himself. Crack! Yi Xian closed his 5 fingers. The space-time was instantly crushed in his hand. His indestructible true spirit had already turned into a small person. It was like the legendary saint soul, something that only a saint could possess. A saint? This is the saint realm. Yi Xian was completely stunned. He was trembling as he murmured. He was very sure that he was in the saint realm at this moment. This was because he felt the heavenly Tao's great power on him. It was as if he could destroy everything in the world with a single thought. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. How could the Grand Mist Purple Qi allow me to directly step into the saint realm? Yi Xian trembled as he roared out loud. His eyes were filled with panic. No, it's fake. Everything is fake. Yi Xian wasn't confused by his own strength. He roared out loud, his eyes blood red as he looked around this mysterious space. He clearly knew that at this moment, only his consciousness had appeared in the Grand Mist space. His mortal body was still in Bullfighting Palace. It was impossible for him to become a saint so easily. What's going on here? Yi Xian constantly reminded himself to calm down. Then, he sat down in the Grand Mist space and pondered over why such a terrifying change would occur to him. After an incense stick of time passed, Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of turbid air. His expression calmed down, and a trace of enlightenment appeared in his eyes. Chapter 730. What a great primordial violet qi! What a great arrangement of the heavenly Tao! It was like a dream, or perhaps he had just woken up from a dream. A self-mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, but there was great hesitation in Yi Xian's eyes. The truth was revealed, everything was revealed. This was a space formed by the primordial violet vapor. Yi Xian had indeed sensed the power of a saint. Furthermore, the heavenly Tao thunderous voice had pointed out the direction of becoming a saint through merit, allowing him to sense the power of a saint in advance. Powerful, he was indeed very powerful. Saints were terrifyingly powerful. At this moment, Yi Xian could completely feel that he had never been this powerful before, because in this independent space, he indeed had the cultivation of a saint. However, Yi Xian was not bewitched by this power, but he also fell into extreme hesitation. Should he give up on using strength to prove his Tao, and directly switch to the path of virtue to become a saint? Re-establishing the heavens and earth meant that he could become a saint. These simple words were the thoughts that the primordial violet vapor conveyed to him. As long as he made a grand wish of the heavens and earth to establish a great sect with the aim of quelling the conflict of the 3 realms, Then he could rely on the primordial violet vapor to become a saint and become the 7th heavenly Tao saint. A choice was placed in front of Yi Xian. As long as he made a grand wish like the 6 great sages in the past, he would be able to use the Hong Meng immortal qi to become a sage and stand on equal footing with the 6 great sages. The 3 realms had been in conflict for a long time. The great war of the shamans and demons had settled their grudges. The 3 realms of heaven, earth, and man each had their own way of governing. If Yi Xian was willing to make the great wish of heaven and earth, and was willing to quell the chaos of the 3 realms, he would be able to obtain great merit and karma, and directly become a saint. A saint. It was a very tempting word. Even Yi Xian could not remain indifferent. As long as he was willing, he could immediately become a saint. The so-called ancient demon court of the witch tribe would not be in his eyes. Even if the 6 great saints saw him, they would have to respectfully address him as fellow Taoist. What a powerful force! Yi Xian's expression was extremely intoxicated. He could completely feel how powerful he was at this moment. And he was even more tempted by this power of his own, as if he had fallen into a state where he could not extricate himself. Open! Yi Xian said softly. His Dharma eyes flickered with sacred light, directly illuminating the heaven, earth, and man realms, and all the living beings of the 3 realms appeared in his mind. A pair of sacred eyes of heaven and earth pierced through the void and saw through the void. Yi Xian even saw the Nether River Patriarch, who was traveling through the void, and a white-robed monk walking towards the heavenly court. However, at this moment Yi Xian did not react at all. He was already intoxicated by the power of a saint. When the holy light in his eyes dissipated, he became extremely silent. Temptation, a great temptation. This was the temptation of the sage realm for Yi Xian. Unfortunately, this isn't the power I want. Suddenly, Yi Xian raised his head, and the intoxicated expression on his face had disappeared. A fierce light flashed through his eyes, and an extremely terrifying divine light blossomed from his body. Scram! His roar shattered mountains and rivers, and the void exploded. Yi Xian roared savagely, and a wisp of chaotic mist appeared around him, violently forcing out the purple sacred light in his body. Ah! A pain worse than death was inflicted on Yi Xian's undying true spirit, as if 10,000 arrows had pierced through his heart and were being bitten by ants. The heavenly Tao immortal characters that were originally entwined around his undying true spirit stuck to it like maggots. At this moment, Yi Xian wanted to force them out of his body, and he immediately suffered a terrible calamity. You want to enslave me? Even if Hong Jun comes in person, it's impossible. Yi Xian roared savagely, and large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. This also proved how much pain he had suffered. The so-called virtuous sage was an act of self-destruction, because this kind of sage had to be below the heavenly Tao. And even more so, they had to rely on heaven and earth to live. If Yi Xian really chose to virtuous sage, he would be suppressed by the heavenly Tao, and he would have to respectfully address Tao ancestor Hong Jun as his teacher. This was definitely not the path Yi Xian wanted to choose. In the past, when Yi Xian was still weak, he had sworn an oath that he would stand above the 9 heavens and look down on all living things. He would become the sage of all living things, and no one would be able to suppress him. Today, the changes in the primordial violet vapor had pointed out the path to virtuous sage, but this was not what Yi Xian wanted. Heaven and earth could be destroyed, but he would not be destroyed, and all things could decay, but he would not be immortal. This was the path Yi Xian wanted to walk. Scram! Suddenly Yi Xian roared like thunder. He suddenly opened his eyes, and his consciousness returned to his physical body. The space between his eyebrows glowed, and his undying true spirit trembled violently. The immortal character formed by the primordial violet vapor was forced to retreat. Qi! 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 The heavenly Tao immortal character withdrew from Yi Xian's sea of consciousness, and once again turned into primordial violet vapor, floating in front of Yi Xian. The purple sacred light on his body also dissipated without a trace. Huff! 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 Yi Xian panted heavily, and large beads of sweat dripped onto the ground of the bullfighting palace. It was as if he had experienced a life and death battle, and even his face was extremely pale. What a primordial violet vapor. It almost made me give up on my own Dao and Dao. Yi Xian clenched his fists, and his eyes were filled with hostility. An extremely violent desire arose in his heart, and he wanted to destroy the primordial violet vapor in his hands. In the end, Yi Xian did not destroy the primordial violet vapor, because it was related to the seventh heaven-ordained saint. Even if he did not want to become a saint through merit, this item would still be of great use to him. Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of turbid air, and he kept calming himself down. After dozens of breaths, Yi Xian finally calmed down. The sudden appearance of the primordial violet qi is already an extremely strange matter. Just now, it almost made me destroy my own method of using strength to prove my Dao. I'm afraid this isn't as simple as I imagined. Yi Xian muttered to himself. His voice was extremely cold, and his eyes were filled with thought. Yuan Ling. Yi Xian thought of a person. It had been 100,000 years since he entered the Earth Immortal realm, but Yuan Ling had never appeared. Even now that he had become a sage-to-be, there was still no trace of Yuan Ling. After spending 4 years together in the human world, although the elemental spirit was well hidden, Yi Xian was still able to understand some of the elemental spirit's nature. Yuan Ling was a sinister and cunning person, and he was also a very shrewd person. Yi Xian understood this very well, and he was even more certain that Yuan Ling would not do nothing. Perhaps the primordial violet vapor had a lot to do with him. Suddenly, when Yi Xian connected the primordial violet vapor with Yuan Ling, his expression changed abruptly, and his eyes darkened, as if he had thought of something. How is this possible? Yi Xian whispered in horror. He was actually fantasizing that the primordial violet vapor could be Yuan Ling's doing, and that he wanted him to destroy his Dao by strength? Impossible, absolutely impossible. If Yuan Ling really has the primordial violet vapor, why doesn't he become a sage-to-be? Yi Xian made a bold guess, and he was even more pondering this question. Unfortunately, no matter how Yi Xian guessed, he did not get an answer. Moreover, this was only his guess, and the primordial violet vapor might not be Yuan Ling's doing. Chapter 731. Ever since he entered the Earth Immortal realm, Yi Xian had constantly encountered powerful enemies from all sides. However, he had never forgotten the existence of Yuan Ling. In his heart, he even regarded Yuan Ling as a sage. If he had to make a comparison between a sage and Yuan Ling, Yi Xian was more afraid of Yuan Ling. This was because even a sage did not know of his existence. Furthermore, he was plotting a chessboard of heaven and earth. Even a sage was within his calculations. A person who dared to scheme against a sage was undoubtedly extremely frightening and mysterious. This was the reason why Yi Xian attached so much importance to Yuan Ling Fu. Yi Xian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air once more. He shook off his troubled thoughts, and could only temporarily suppress the threat of Yuan Ling. This was because there were 2 quasi-saints heading towards the celestial court. This was also a problem he had to face. Just now, when he was in the primordial air, Yi Xian felt the power of a sage. He also saw the Nether River ancestor, and the white-robed monk, heading towards the celestial court. Obviously, both of them were here for the primordial violet vapor. Although Yi Xian had never seen the Nether River ancestor, he was the only one in the 3 realms who possessed the blood qi that could move the Tongtian ground. As for the white-robed monk, Yi Xian guessed that he should be a quasi-saint of Buddhism. Since he dared to come to the celestial court alone, he was obviously not an easy person to deal with. Celestial Emperor. Suddenly, Venus Taibai's panicked voice came from outside the bullfighting palace. If one listened carefully, one would find that his voice was trembling uncontrollably. Fellow Taoists, please wait for me at the Jade Pool. Yi Xian already knew that the 2 quasi-saints had entered the celestial court without needing Venus Taibai to report. Yes, Celestial Emperor. Venus Taibai wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and hurriedly left the bullfighting palace. Jade Pool Celestial Court. Venus Taibai had a fawning smile on his face as he stood in the middle of the Jade Pool and looked at the 2 quasi-saints. However, the 2 quasi-saints were sitting cross-legged without saying anything, which made Venus Taibai a little nervous. The Nether River Patriarch's body was shrouded in blood-red light. Strands of obscure ripples were released around him, causing the void around him to faintly echo with the cries of ghosts and howls of gods. His hair was silver white, and his face was like jade. He looked like a young man, but his eyes were blood red, and he gave off an extremely evil feeling. He was definitely not as simple as he looked. The white-robed monk looked extremely peaceful. He was sitting cross-legged with his palms clasped together. A string of white jade Buddhist beads was twirling in his hand. He was reciting Buddhist proverbs in a low voice. The white-robed monk was the incarnation of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. It was also a Dharma body that he had cultivated. Although Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was in the 18 layers of hell, his Dharma body was no different from him. Everyone says that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is merciful and would purge the world of evil. Endless time has passed, and you have been guarding the 18 layers of hell. However, I did not expect that you would covet the primordial violet vapor so much. The Nether River Patriarch sneered again and again, glancing sideways at the white-robed monk with a hint of enmity in his eyes. Both of them were quasi-saints in the underworld. They had interacted many times, and the Nether River Patriarch hated Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva to the core. The 18 layers of hell were right next to the unholy blood sea. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's daily recitation of scriptures to purge the souls of the dead, causing the Asura clan, he found it to suffer greatly. The two of them had fought countless times, but neither could do anything to the other. Amitabha. The white-robed monk chanted softly. He glanced coolly at the Nether River Patriarch and said in a low voice, "The primordial violet vapor is an item to become a saint. Nether River, your evil aura is too strong. How could you become a saint?" What a joke. The Nether River Patriarch abruptly rose to his feet, the Yuan 2 and Avicii swords circling around him. Mournful bloody light shot out of his pores as he glared at Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva with extremely cold murderous intent. If we're talking about slaughter, who knows how many beings have died to the immortal slaying four swords? Tongtian's slaughter is no less than mine. But didn't he still become a saint? The Nether River Patriarch scolded coldly. Tongtian is one of the three pure ones. He was even formed from Panga's Yuan spirit by splitting into three parts. He's also Panga's true lineage, and is blessed by the power of the heavenly Tao. He's the destined saint, and you, Nether River, were born from the filth of the unholy blood sea. How could you compare to Tongtian? The white-robed monk said flatly. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, aren't you afraid that I'll destroy your Dharma body here? The Nether River Patriarch was enraged. His bloody radiance flickered while the Yuan 2 and Avicii swords hummed, as if he would really attack the white-robed monk and kill him on the spot. If you destroy my Dharma body, I'll enter the unholy blood sea and chant sutras for the Asura clan every day. You can try if you don't believe me. The white-robed monk said unhurriedly. You're threatening me? The Nether River Patriarch's eyes were cold. The entire Jade Lake trembled as he took a step forward. Murderous intent and killing intent shot to the skies, and the 33-layered celestial court was abruptly covered in bloody radiance. Unfortunately, the white-robed monk was unmoved by the Nether River Patriarch's might. He continued to chant Buddhist scriptures, and chose to ignore the Nether River Patriarch directly. I'll send you on your way. Who was the Nether River Patriarch? He was a pinnacle elite among demi-saints, and an extremely terrifying existence. He was said to be immortal beneath the saints, and because his true form was the unholy blood sea, he was born undefeatable. This time, the white-robed monk had violated his taboo. He wouldn't be the Nether River Patriarch if he didn't kill him here and now. Suddenly, a calm voice echoed from outside the Jade Lake at the critical moment. It made the Nether River Patriarch's breath stop, and the murderous intent he unleashed vanished. My two friends, please come to the Celestial Court. I apologize for not coming out to meet you. Yi Xian was dressed in black, his gray-white hair hanging behind his head. He was strolling into the Jade Lake, and only stopped when he arrived before the two demi-saints. Haha, Yi Daoyu was just Daoyu Jinxian back then. When we meet, Yi Daoyu is already a demi-saint. That's something worth celebrating. The Nether River Patriarch laughed out loud. His change in demeanor was simply astonishing. Amitabha. The white-robed monk put his palms together and said, Ksitigarbha greets Yi Tiendi. My two friends, please take a seat, Yi Xian said calmly. The three sat down together, and Venus Tai Bai quietly left under Yi Xian's signal, leaving only the three of them in the vast jade lake. Silence. Silence. When the three of them took their seats, the atmosphere quietly became strange. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. May I know why my two friends have graced the celestial court with your presence? Yi Xian was the first to break the silence. He looked at the two with a warm smile, as if he really didn't know why the two demi-saints had come to the celestial court. The Nether River Patriarch's smile froze when he saw Yi Xian's puzzled look. Then, his eyes turned slightly and he said, Yi Daoyu, a straightforward person doesn't resort to insinuations. I've heard that the primordial violet vapor has appeared, and that it is in your hands. I've come today to take a look at it. At the same time, the white-robed monk didn't say anything, but he was also looking at Yi Xian. Clearly, he had come for the same reason as the Nether River Patriarch, just not as directly. Chapter 732. Primordial Violet Vapor? Yi Xian exclaimed, then looked at the Nether River Patriarch. Who told you that Taoist Nether River? How can I have primordial violet vapor? Looking at Yi Xian's innocent look, the smile on the Nether River Patriarch's face gradually disappeared. His fingers tapped on the table making dull sounds. His gaze on Yi Xian gradually turned cold. Fellow Taoist Yi, listen to my advice. The Hongmeng Immortal Vapor is of great importance, and countless demi-saints covet it. If you keep it in your hands, you'll only invite trouble. Why don't you give it to me? This way, you can avoid a great calamity, Patriarch Nether River said coldly. Haha. Suddenly Yi Xian laughed. His laughter was extremely wild, and his eyes narrowed as he looked at Patriarch Nether River and said, Not to mention that I don't have any primordial violet chi. Even if the primordial violet chi is really on me, can I take your words today as a threat to me? Threat? The Nether River Patriarch smiled darkly. He looked straight at Yi Xian and said, I don't mean to threaten you. I'm just telling you the truth. As the Nether River Patriarch spoke, he slowly rose from his seat and strolled in the jade pool. Suddenly, he turned back to look at Yi Xian. A strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. If you insist on thinking that I'm threatening you, then I have nothing to say. However, I hope you can understand that if you don't lend me the primordial violet chi today, I'm afraid I won't leave so easily. It was a blatant threat. He didn't hide it at all. The Nether River Patriarch's words were sharp. He had expected that Yi Xian wouldn't admit that the primordial violet vapor was in his hands. Naturally, he was prepared. Nether River, it seems that you really don't care about me. Yi Xian rose from the Emperor's seat and strolled toward the Nether River. He only stopped when he was 10 feet away from the Nether River Patriarch. However, a murderous intent was locked onto the Nether River Patriarch. Haha. Sensing Yi Xian's killing intent, the Nether River Patriarch wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he laughed wildly and said, Yi Xian, I've already given you some face. Do you think you're a match for me? As long as the Blood Sea doesn't dry up, the Nether River won't die. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed as he muttered these words. On the other hand, Patriarch Nether River sneered as a trace of complacency flashed through his eyes. It was not that the Nether River Patriarch was arrogant, but he had the ability to do so. He could feel that Yi Xian's cultivation was extremely terrifying, and it gave him a great pressure, which shocked him to the core. Who would have thought that in just a few tens of thousands of years, Yi Xian's cultivation would rise to such a terrifying level? This was simply a fantasy. Unfortunately, the Nether River Patriarch wasn't afraid of Yi Xian at all because Yi Xian was an immortal existence. If the two of them really fought, it would only be Yi Xian who would be defeated and run away. Yi Xian, even a saint wouldn't be able to kill me easily, let alone you. Hand over the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor. You won't be able to keep it at all. The Nether River Patriarch didn't want to fight Yi Xian because he came to the Celestial Court for the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor. Even if he could defeat Yi Xian, it didn't matter to him at all. Yi Xian, when you ascended to the position of Celestial Emperor, I sent someone to give you 3 blood god fruits. You and I have some history, so I hope you'll hand over the Hongmeng Immortal Vapor. When I become a saint in the future, I won't forget your kindness today. The Nether River Patriarch looked at Yi Xian with burning eyes. Nether River, do you really think I can't kill you? Rumble. The heaven and earth were shaking, and the clouds were shaking. Boundless darkness covered the sky, and chaotic mist rolled in the heaven. The blood-red light illuminated the entire sky, and a 10,000-foot-long halberd silently stood in the sky. Yi Xian squinted his eyes and his eyes turned cold. The heaven-destroying halberd shook the sky, and released an ancient evil chi. It was as if all living things would be destroyed by this halberd. This is... When the heaven-destroying halberd appeared, the smile on the Nether River Patriarch's face disappeared. His expression instantly became serious because his mind was trembling slightly. This kind of trembling had never happened to him before. It was as if he was being stared at by an extremely terrifying creature, as if he was about to be devoured in the next moment. A chaotic divine weapon? No. Impossible. How could such a legendary item appear? The Nether River Patriarch screamed in his heart. His eyes were frozen, and his heart was in turmoil. The Blood Sea would not dry up, and the Nether River would not die. This represented the terror of the Nether River Patriarch, and made him invincible. However, the Nether River Patriarch knew very well that all things in the world reinforced and countered each other. How could there be an existence that was truly immortal? Even a saint could be in danger of dying. The Nether Blood Sea was formed by the filthy blood of Pangu. He was born in the early years of the Eldritch Age. In detail, he could be considered a descendant of Pangu. However, he was not recognized by many living things in the three realms. If a saint wanted to kill him, as long as his Nether Blood Sea was destroyed, he would die. However, the Nether Blood Sea was endless. Even if there was only a drop left, he could be reborn again. However, all things countered each other. He was not truly immortal. If a saint was determined to kill him, he would be in danger of dying. Other than a saint, there was one other thing that could really kill him. That was a chaotic divine weapon. It was also an item that did not exist in the three realms. It was said that Pangu was born from chaos. He was originally a living thing in the chaos. There were too many terrifying things in the mysterious chaos. It was also called a chaotic divine weapon. If he was attacked by a chaotic divine weapon, he would definitely die. This was his only weakness. When he saw the heaven-destroying halberd, the Nether River Patriarch's heart trembled. He guessed that the heaven-destroying halberd was a legendary chaotic divine weapon. Impossible. Other than the Donghuang bell in the Donghuang Tai's hands, how could there be another chaotic divine weapon in the world? The Nether River Patriarch's face was pale. He was shouting at Yi Xian. Clearly, he was shocked by the heaven-destroying halberd. At this moment, there was great fear in his eyes. Other than a saint, the Nether River Patriarch was most afraid of Donghuang Tai of the demon race. This was because the Donghuang bell in the Donghuang Tai's hands was a chaotic divine weapon. The Donghuang bell also had another name, the Bell of Chaos. However, the Nether River Patriarch did not expect that Yi Xian, whom he thought was a sure kill, would have a chaotic divine weapon in his hands. This put him in a dilemma. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression was sinister. He looked at the Nether River Patriarch with a murderous look. If he could really kill the Nether River Patriarch, it would be a wake-up call to the other sage-to-be. It would also save him a lot of trouble. Killing the Nether River Patriarch. Yi Xian had this idea. This was also a warning to the other sage-to-be. It could deter the other sage-to-be from coming to the celestial court to ask for the Hong Meng immortal vapor. However, Yi Xian was not sure if the Heaven's Destruction halberd could really kill the Nether River Patriarch. Yi Xian was only half confident. This was because when Yi Xian seized the throne of the Celestial Emperor, he used the Heaven's Destruction halberd to nail the Jade Emperor to the Southern Heaven Gate. The Jade Emperor was connected to the fate of the Celestial Court. He was also known to be immortal, and had the support of the heavenly Dao Dragon Qi. However, he died under the Heaven's Destruction halberd. Yi Xian's murderous look came, and went quickly. Yi Xian kept the Heaven's Destruction halberd under the surprised gaze of the Nether River Patriarch. He did not fight with the Nether River Patriarch. Obviously, whether Yi Xian could kill the Nether River Patriarch or not, the benefits to him were too small. One should know that the Nether River Patriarch's cultivation was not low. If the two really fought, even if he could kill the Nether River Patriarch, he would be severely injured. Moreover, the ancient demon court would hold the Myriad Demon Conference 10,000 years later. If he was seriously injured, how could he resist the ancient demon court? This was definitely not the result Yi Xian wanted. Chapter 733. The great battle ended in an instant, and the entire jade pool regained its silence. However, the Nether River Patriarch's eyes flickered as he looked at Yi Xian in surprise. No one knew what he was thinking. I've underestimated you. The Nether River Patriarch was silent for a while, before he suddenly spat out such a sentence. There are many people who underestimate me, but there are also many who fear me. You're definitely not one of them. Yi Xian said indifferently. As an expert among the sage-to-be, the Nether River Patriarch was no ordinary person. Although he was arrogant, he was not ignorant. Yi Xian did not fight him not because he was afraid of him, but because he knew that there would be no result even if they fought. Yi Xian, you're qualified to be on equal footing with me. However, I have to remind you that you can't keep the Hong Meng Immortal Vapor. It will only bring a life and death crisis to you and the Celestial Court. The Nether River Patriarch withdrew his aura, and then strolled to Yi Xian. He looked straight into Yi Xian's eyes and said in a deep voice, "You should know that the Celestial Court is an existence that the Eastern Emperor Tai and Di Jun must eliminate after the birth of the ancient demon court. Moreover, the Hong Meng Immortal Vapor is in your hands. Neither the ancient demon court nor the witch tribe will let you go." Looking at the Nether River Patriarch's solemn posture, Yi Xian frowned slightly and said, "What do you want to say to me? Give it to me. Give me the Hong Meng Immortal Vapor. You should know that I'm formed from the Nether Blood Sea. It's extremely difficult for anyone in this world to kill me. As long as I can become a saint, I can promise you that I'll help you destroy the ancient demon court." The Nether River Patriarch said firmly, and looked at Yi Xian with an extremely sincere gaze. As the Nether River Patriarch's words fell, the white-robed monk's expression changed drastically. He looked at the Nether River Patriarch with an extremely solemn expression, as if he had gained a new understanding of the Nether River Patriarch. Amipa. The white-robed monk slowly stood up and chanted a Buddhist mantra. His expression turned solemn as he looked at Yi Xian. "Yi Daoyu, I don't have much to say. As long as you give me the primordial violet qi, I will personally go to the ancient demon court and resolve the crisis of the celestial court." Clearly, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had already thought it through before he left. It was unrealistic to forcefully obtain the primordial violet vapor from Yi Xian, and Yi Xian's greatest danger at the moment was the ancient demon court. He could only use this as a bargaining chip with Yi Xian. At this moment, the two quasi-sages were very sincere. They were definitely not trying to deceive Yi Xian. It was just that Yi Xian's calm demeanor gave people a sense of tranquility. Yi Xian was either silent or deep in thought. This made the two quasi-sages fall silent as well. They were waiting for Yi Xian's reply. After several dozen breaths, Yi Xian finally looked up at the two of them. He said, "The primordial violet vapor is indeed not in my hands. Friends, please leave." Yi Xian directly ordered them to leave. This greatly disappointed the two quasi-sages. They looked at Yi Xian with even more reluctance. However, with Yi Xian's cultivation, it was impossible for them to succeed even if they wanted to. "Yi Tiandi, I must remind you that when the Myriad Demon Conference begins 10,000 years later, the ancient demon court will regain control of the three realms. Not only will the two celestial emperors destroy your celestial court, they will also personally ask for the primordial violet vapor from you. If Yi Tiandi wants to survive this crisis, only I can help you. Farewell." The white-robed monk put his palms together. Clearly, he was also giving Yi Xian time to consider. He was the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Not only did he possess great supernatural powers, he was also an extremely difficult person to deal with. However, it was unknown how confident he was that he could help Yi Xian survive this crisis. The Nether River Patriarch sighed as the white-robed monk left. He did not bid farewell to Yi Xian, and directly left the celestial court. However, he would not give up on the primordial violet vapor. He had to think of another way. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes as he watched the Nether River Patriarch's departing figure. He seemed to be hesitating about something. Then, a look of determination flashed through his eyes. "Friend Nether River, please wait." Suddenly Yi Xian spoke softly. The Nether River Patriarch was stunned when he heard Yi Xian's words. Then, ecstasy appeared on his face as he turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian casually struck out a beam of bloody light that shot directly at the Nether River Patriarch. The Nether River Patriarch caught it. When he looked at the object in his hand, he was suddenly stunned on the spot. Nether River Diagram? The Nether River Patriarch enunciated each word clearly as he suddenly looked at Yi Xian. His eyes suddenly turned gloomy as he looked at Yi Xian with great hostility. "Where did you get this? Where is my disciple, Blood River disciple?" The Nether River Patriarch's voice was cold because the Nether River Diagram belonged to him. Although it was not a supreme treasure, it represented his identity as a member of the Nether Sea of Blood lineage. It was also a token that he had given to the Blood River Taoist. The Nether River Patriarch had several senior disciples. The Blood River Taoist was his youngest disciple. Although his cultivation was not high, he was the one that the Nether River Patriarch doted on the most. However, after more than 100,000 years, his disciple seemed to have disappeared from the world. Even though he had sent people to search all over the 3 realms, there was still no news of his disciple. When Blood River Taoist died, he gave this to me and asked me to take it to you. He hoped that you could avenge him, Yi Xian said calmly. In the past, the Blood River Taoist did not want to be enslaved by Yuan Ling in the Blood Sea battlefield, and died tragically at the hands of Yuan Ling. Before he died, he gave the Nether River Diagram to Yi Xian, and told him that as long as he took the Nether River Diagram to the Nether River Patriarch, the Nether River Patriarch would help him enter the Daluo Jingxian. However, Yi Xian did not look for the Nether River Patriarch because he was too weak at that time. If the Nether River Patriarch killed him, he would not be able to resist at all. Now that the Nether River Patriarch was here, Yi Xian decided to settle the matter and return the Nether River Diagram to its rightful owner. Who killed my Blood River disciple? The Nether River Patriarch was surrounded by a murderous aura, and his fists were slightly clenched. Obviously, he valued this disciple of his very much. Otherwise, his emotions would not have fluctuated so much. Moreover, the Blood River Taoist's death was a slap to the Nether River Patriarch's face. He was a sage-to-be, and although his Nether Sea of Blood lineage could not be compared to the ancient demon court and the witch tribe, he was not a pushover. However, someone dared to kill his disciple, and did not take him seriously at all. How could the Nether River Patriarch not be furious? Yuan Ling. Yi Xian spat out the 2 simple words. He stared at the Nether River Patriarch, hoping to find some clues from the Nether River Patriarch's facial expression. Unfortunately, Yi Xian was disappointed. The Nether River Patriarch looked confused and obviously had not heard of this person. Who is Yuan Ling? Is he a new sage-to-be? Or is he just a Daluo Jingxian? The Nether River Patriarch asked gloomily. Come and see. Yi Xian's palm and fingers moved like shuttles, and Yuan Ling's appearance appeared in the void. The Nether River Patriarch looked over. Chapter 734. This person. I seem to have seen him somewhere before. Patriarch Nether River muttered as he looked at the appearance of the origin spirit. However, when Yi Xian heard it, his expression changed, and the aura around his body fluctuated to the extreme. Think about it carefully. Where have you seen him before? Yi Xian's breathing quickened. Let me think about it. This person is. It's him. Impossible. It's absolutely impossible. How can he still be alive? Suddenly, Ancestor Nether River let out a low roar. His entire body trembled, as if he had discovered a huge secret. Who is he? Yi Xian grabbed Ancestor Nether River's shoulder. His eyes were flashing fiercely. He kept shaking Ancestor Nether River's shoulder to show how excited he was. Yi Xian was already disappointed. He thought that Ancestor Nether River did not know who Yuan Ling was, and that he was just lucky to draw Yuan Ling's appearance. However, Ancestor Nether River gave him a huge surprise. He actually recognized Yuan Ling. Tell me, who is he? Looking at Ancestor Nether River's shocked expression, Yi Xian roared. His eyes were bloodshot, because he was about to know who Yuan Ling was. Ancestor Red Cloud. This person is Ancestor Red Cloud. The Nether River Patriarch finally recovered from his shock, and spat out a person's name. However, when Yi Xian heard it, his expression froze. Ancestor Red Cloud? Yi Xian muttered to himself. That's right. It's Ancestor Hongyan. Although it's been a long time, and I've almost forgotten about him. I only remembered him today when I saw Hongyan's appearance. Elder Mingyi said firmly and confidently. Panga split the heavens and Hongjun preached the Tao. That year the primordial world had just been created. There were no saints in the world. I had just taken form from the netherworld blood sea. After countless years, Tao ancestor Hongjun killed the 3 corpses and became a saint. He even announced to the 3 realms that he wanted to preach the Tao in the Purple Cloud Palace. In the Purple Cloud Palace, I met Ancestor Hongyan once. Back then, his cultivation was already extremely high. However, he was easygoing and kind by nature. He never competed with others. Yet he obtained the 7th Hong Meng Immortal Vapor. But it was also because of this 7th Hong Meng Immortal Vapor that he was besieged by 2 demon-race celestial emperors. As soon as he walked out of the Purple Cloud Palace, countless sages to be attacked him in secret. That battle was earth-shattering. Ancestor Red Cloud also died tragically between heaven and earth. At that time, Hong Meng Immortal Vapor also disappeared without a trace. I can't be wrong. This person is Ancestor Hongyan. I can't be wrong. The Nether River Patriarch spoke quickly, but his expression was uncertain. But he is clearly dead. Why would he change his name to Yuan Ling? At this moment, Yi Xian became silent. It was as if he did not hear the Nether River Patriarch's words. His fists were clenched tightly, and the aura around him was fluctuating to the extreme. Hong Meng Immortal Vapor is indeed his doing. Suddenly Yi Xian roared. His eyes shone with a fierce light. He was finally sure that the Hong Meng Immortal Vapor was something that Yuan Ling deliberately allowed him to obtain. Tell me, where is Ancestor Hongyan's foundation? Yi Xian roared loudly at the Nether River Patriarch. Looking at Yi Xian's agitated expression, the Nether River Patriarch frowned slightly. Then he slowly shook his head and said, I don't know. Legend has it that Ancestor Hongyan was the first red cloud in the world to take human form. I've never heard of him having any foundation. Moreover, this person only appeared for a short period of time. He only listened to Tao in the Purple Cloud Palace during the early years of the Untainted Land. Then he died between heaven and earth. No, this can't be right. Suddenly, Yi Xian muttered to himself. This was because he clearly remembered the teachings that Yuan Ling gave him during the 4 years of the Blood Sea battlefield. Yuan Ling appeared as an immortal spirit. He was also someone's external incarnation. Moreover, Yuan Ling once said that his original body did not appear in front of Yi Xian because he was afraid that the sages would notice him. Furthermore, Yuan Ling was a person who was respected as an ancestor in the 3 realms. To be respected as an ancestor, he must be a person that the living beings in the 3 realms were familiar with. However, Ancestor Hongyan died tragically between heaven and earth back then. The later generations would not know about him at all. This was obviously contradictory. Is it possible that Ancestor Hong Yun died tragically back then, and this red cloud was actually someone's external incarnation? Yi Xian asked in surprise. Now that you mention it, it's highly possible. Back then, I saw Ancestor Hong Yun die under the Bell of Chaos with my own eyes. However, Dong Huang Tai said something strange. The Nether River Patriarch said in a deep voice. What did he say? He offended someone he could not afford to offend. He even returned to the ancient demon court with a long sigh. The Nether River Patriarch said solemnly. Clearly, he had also thought of something extremely terrifying. Yi Xian, you must know that Ancestor Hong Yun was a sage to be. If he was just someone's external incarnation, but he dared to let his external incarnation go to the Purple Cloud Palace to listen to Tao, then this person is too terrifying. The Nether River Patriarch said in a trembling voice. Fog, a great fog. Yi Xian originally thought that he knew Yuan Ling's true identity, but he was greatly disappointed. If ancestor Hong Yun was also Yuan Ling's external incarnation, then who was his original body? How dare he listen to Tao ancestor Hong Jun, who was already a sage, and even obtained the 7th Hong Meng violet vapor. Yi Xian was now absolutely certain that the Hong Meng violet vapor in his hand was deliberately given to him by Yuan Ling. Moreover, Yuan Ling wanted to use it to destroy his path of Tao through strength. Thinking of such a vicious scheme, Yi Xian broke out in a cold sweat. If he had not broken free at the last moment, if he had really chosen to become a sage through virtue, he would have fallen into Yuan Ling's trap. At this moment, Yi Xian felt extremely horrified. It was as if a pair of eyes were staring at him all the time. If he made a mistake, he would definitely be consigned to eternal damnation. The Eastern Emperor Tai. Perhaps the Eastern Emperor Tai has some understanding of the Yuan Ling you mentioned, the Nether River Patriarch said in a low voice. Clearly, the conversation with Yi Xian today had frightened the Nether River Patriarch. He felt that he had fallen into a huge trap, and it gave him a sense of extreme danger. This feeling was so strong that it made the Nether River Patriarch's hair stand on end. The Eastern Emperor Tai? Yi Xian muttered to himself, as if he had grasped an extremely important clue. At this moment, he also thought of Sun Wukong's warning to him, and became even more suspicious of Patriarch Subhoodie. The Eastern Emperor Tai Subhoodie. These two people were an extremely important clue. However, Yi Xian was now the focus of everyone's attention. He also had to face the great calamity of the ancient demon court. He simply could not do anything else. Yi Xian, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. You're on your own in the future. The Nether River Patriarch already had the intention to leave, because he already felt that he had fallen into an extremely terrifying trap. He also found that there were too many suspicious points about Yi Xian. It was better not to get too close to Yi Xian. As for the Hong Meng violet vapor, he could only think of other ways to obtain it. Chapter 735. As Patriarch Nether River spoke, he turned around and was about to leave the heavenly court. However, before he could take 3 steps, Yi Xian's cold voice quietly sounded from behind him. You're leaving just like that? Don't you want the primordial violet vapor anymore? The Nether River Patriarch suddenly turned back, his eyes flashing with a sharp light. The primordial violet vapor is indeed in your hands. Buzz! Yi Xian waved his hand and covered the jade pool so that no one could investigate what was happening inside. The void swayed and rippled. The primordial violet vapor quietly appeared in Yi Xian's hand, giving off a dazzling light that made one feel dizzy. Give me the primordial violet vapor. Rumble! The void exploded and growls rang out. When the primordial violet vapor appeared in front of the Nether River Patriarch, his face flushed red as he lunged at Yi Xian. Bang! Fist and palm collided, shaking heaven and earth. The vast jade pool trembled violently, and cracks appeared in the void, proving how terrifying their attack was. PCHHD. The Nether River Patriarch shot back, but Yi Xian was still holding the primordial violet vapor in his hand. Clearly, it was impossible for the Nether River Patriarch to snatch it from him. Yi Xian, give the primordial violet vapor to me. The Nether River ancestor roared in anger as blood light exploded around him. The phenomenon of the surging blood river rose up, and an extremely terrifying killing intent locked onto Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian didn't release any aura, and his voice was very calm without any ripples. Do you think you can take the primordial violet vapor from me? The Nether River Patriarch's face darkened as Yi Xian's words fell. He was panting heavily, and it was only after a dozen breaths that he slowly dispersed his aura. What do you want? Nether River Patriarch asked coldly. Clearly, the Nether River Patriarch knew that it was unrealistic to forcefully seize the primordial violet vapor. He had only attacked Yi Xian in a moment of excitement. Now that he had come to his senses, he forced himself to calm down. Patriarch Nether River deeply understood that he had just bid farewell and left. However, Yi Xian had taken out the primordial violet vapor himself. Patriarch Nether River would never believe that Yi Xian had no ulterior motives. I can lend you the Hong Meng Immortal Qi. If you can become a saint with the Hong Meng Immortal Qi, it will be your opportunity, Yi Xian said with a smile. Tell me, what are your conditions? Patriarch Nether River wasn't stupid enough to believe that Yi Xian would lend the primordial violet chi to him for nothing. So he spoke in a low voice. I like to deal with smart people, and you are one of them. Yi Xian smiled and nodded. Then he strolled over to Patriarch Nether River with a strange smile. He looked straight at Patriarch Nether River and said, My conditions are simple. I want you to lead the Azura clan to join the Celestial Court. From now on, the Nether Blood Sea will be a part of the Celestial Court. Impossible. As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, Patriarch Nether River's expression changed drastically. He immediately refuted without any hesitation. Yi Xian, don't even think about it. After the Demon Conference, the Ancient Demon Court will declare war on the Celestial Court. Moreover, you have killed tens of thousands of people from the Wu tribe. The Wu tribe will not let you go. If I lead the Azura clan to join the Celestial Court, won't I be seeking my own death? Patriarch Nether River growled coldly. His expression became extremely ugly. Clearly, he could not agree to such conditions. If he really did agree to Yi Xian, it would undoubtedly be the end of his Nether Blood Sea. Haha. Yi Xian smiled. He really smiled. However, his smile was extremely cold. His gaze towards Patriarch Nether River gradually turned indifferent. Think about it, Nether River. Using the future of your Azura clan in exchange for a chance to become a saint is a better deal for you than this. Yi Xian was talking to himself. The Hongmeng immortal vapor floated in his palm. The misty purple light pierced into Patriarch Nether River's eyes, making his breathing quicken. He could not bear to look away from the Hongmeng immortal vapor. No, absolutely not. Patriarch Nether River clenched his fists and muttered while trembling. Although the Hongmeng immortal vapor was very important to him, he was extremely conflicted to gamble the future of the Nether Blood Sea. Think about it. Become a saint. If you can become a saint, you will be on equal footing with the 6 great saints. So what if the Azura clan is destroyed? Like a demon's whisper, like a devil's temptation. Yi Xian's voice was filled with a soul-stirring demonic power. He did not use any bewitching techniques. He was just stating an ironclad fact. Nether River, countless years have passed. Other than becoming a saint, are other things really that important to you? And don't forget that although the Ancient Demon Court is powerful, and has Nuwa behind it, the Celestial Court also has 4 pre-saints. As long as Nuwa does not act, it will not be so easy for the Donghuang Tai to destroy the Celestial Court. Yi Xian was persuading slowly. The Hongmeng immortal vapor in his hand seemed to be deliberately stared at by Patriarch Nether River. It was simply an extreme temptation. The Ancient Demon Court is not as simple as you think. Let's not talk about Emperor Jun. He is proficient in all the supreme secret techniques of the Demon Clan. His great divine powers are unmatched. The Bell of Chaos in the Donghuang Tai is even more terrifying. He is also said to be invincible. No one can defeat him. Moreover, the ancient demons under the 2 demon emperors are all Daluo Jingxian. There are dozens of pre-saints among them. This force is not something your celestial court can resist. And that's not the most important thing. You have to know that the ancient demon court has one of the 3 strongest formations in the world, the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation. When this formation is activated, even saints have to be wary. Moreover, Saint Nuwa has announced to the 3 realms that billions of demons are loyal to the ancient demon court. What ability do you, Yi Xian, have to resist the ancient demon court? Although the Nether River Patriarch coveted the Hongmeng immortal vapor, he was no fool. He was not blinded by greed. As a pre-saint of the primeval age, how could he not know the terror of the ancient demon court? The Cosmic Stars Formation? Facing the Nether River Patriarch's question, Yi Xian muttered in a low voice. Even he could not refute it. The Cosmic Stars Formation was comprehended by the Eastern Emperor Tai, from the innate spirit treasure, He Tu and Luo Shu. It combined the power of the 365 stars in the sky with the solar star, and the lunar star as the eye of the formation. It was incomparably deep and murderous. The 365 cosmic stars, followed by the 108,000 great stars, including the North Star and the Big Dipper. The South Star. The Big Dipper 6 stars. The Big Dipper 4 stars. The Big Dipper 3 stars. and the Middle Dipper 5 stars. There were a total of 5-star duels. In addition, there were the 28 mansions, the heavenly spirits and earthly fiends, the 9 glorious stars, the metal, wood, water, fire, earth stars, and so on. The 365 demon immortals, selected by Emperor Jun and Eastern Emperor Tai, were all at the peak of the grand heavenly realm. 365 Dalio Jingxian, 2 pre-saints, Emperor Jun, Eastern Emperor Tai, and 10,000 ancient demons. Even a saint would have a hard time against them. The cosmic stars formation was a wondrous formation that could sweep across the primitive universe. Only the 12 divine fiends formation and the immortal slaying sword formation could be on par with it. 365 greater cosmic stars banners were needed to set up this formation, which corresponded to the 365 main stars in the sky. Then, there were 14,800 lesser cosmic stars banners, which corresponded to 14,800 lesser cosmic stars banners, which corresponded to 14,800 lesser cosmic stars banners, together with the power of 10,000 ancient demons, each representing a star. The cosmic stars formation could be formed with peerless power. The 365 greater cosmic stars banners were the roots, the 14,800 lesser cosmic stars banners were the trunk, and the 10,000 ancient demons were the branches and leaves. With the power of the cosmic stars banners linked together, one could imagine how vast and mighty the formation was. Be it the greater cosmic star banners, or the lesser cosmic star banners, each of the banners was completely different and corresponded to different stars. The cosmic stars formation was the formation that protected the ancient celestial court. It was the formation closest to the immortal slaying sword formation. This formation was different from other formations. Other formations, such as the 9 Bends Yellow River formation and the 10 ultimate formations, formed their own formation space that isolated the heavenly secrets from the outside world. However, this formation did not have such a formation space. However, it could lock onto everyone within the formation. Those who were locked onto by it would not be able to escape the fall of the starlight, no matter what kind of divine ability they had. This formation was fused with the outside world and summoned the power of the cosmic stars. The power of the billions of stars was strong enough to destroy the world. Why did the Jia sect immortals leave? Why was Tong Tian so certain that the celestial court would be destroyed? It was because Tong Tian knew that the ancient demon court's foundation was not something that Yi Xian could resist. How is it? Are you afraid? Patriarch Nether River sneered, but his gaze was fixed on the primordial violet vapor. Clearly, he was extremely reluctant to part with it if he could not obtain it. Afraid? Yi Xian's thoughts turned, and his lips curled into a sinister smile. There has never been anything in this world that I am afraid of. Since Taoist Nether River is unwilling to join the celestial court with the Nether Sea of blood lineage, I won't see you off. Suddenly, Yi Xian slowly put away the primordial violet vapor. However, the speed at which he put it into the Simaru space was extremely slow, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. At that moment, the Nether River Patriarch's face was extremely purple. He stared at the primordial violet vapor in Yi Xian's hand with great hesitation in his eyes. Where was the mockery he had towards Yi Xian just now? Clearly, Yi Xian was forcing the Nether River Patriarch to make a decision. He wanted him to gamble the future of the Nether Sea of blood lineage. Either join the celestial court, and the primordial violet vapor would be lent to Nether River to comprehend. If he could become a saint, all the problems would no longer be a problem. The second choice was for the Azura clan of the Nether Sea of blood to stand side by side with the celestial court. If the celestial court died, the Azura clan would die. This was a gamble, and a huge one at that. As for whether the Nether River Patriarch wanted to gamble, it was all up to him. At that moment, the primordial violet vapor was gradually entering the Simaru space and was about to disappear before the Nether River Patriarch's eyes. Just as the Simaru space was about to close, the Nether River Patriarch's sorrowful voice rang out. All right, I agree. The Nether River Patriarch roared, his eyes bloodshot. In the end, he could not resist the temptation of becoming a saint, and chose to compromise with Yi Xian. Chapter 736. Becoming a Saint. This was the Nether River Patriarch's greatest dream. Nothing could compare to becoming a saint, even if it meant risking the future of the Nether Blood Sea. What happened next was very simple. The Nether River Patriarch joined the Celestial Court and became the 5th demi-saint. He quietly opened a door that led to the Nether Blood Sea where the Azura tribe resided. Yi Xian made it very clear to the Nether River Patriarch that the primordial violet vapor would only be lent to him and not given to him. If the Nether River Patriarch couldn't become a saint, then the primordial violet vapor would have to be returned to Yi Xian. The Nether River Patriarch agreed without hesitation. Regardless of whether he could become a saint or not, the primordial violet vapor would be useless to him in the future. Becoming a saint was naturally good, but if he couldn't, then the primordial violet vapor would be useless to him as well. Since then, the Nether River Patriarch went into seclusion in the Celestial Court. Before he went into seclusion, he issued a decree to the Nether Blood Sea. No one knew that the Nether Blood Sea had joined the Celestial Court. Bullfighting Palace, on the Imperial Couch. As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Yi Xian was also a man who had left the Celestial Court tens of thousands of years ago. Now that he had settled down a little, he naturally did some unspeakable things with the Empyrean Fairy. It was deep into the night, and the candlelight flickered. The Empyrean Fairy's face was flushed as if she had fallen asleep. Her face was full of happiness, but there was a hint of fatigue between her brows. At this moment, Yi Xian rose from the Imperial Couch and casually put on his black robe. He then strolled off the bed and walked out of the bullfighting palace. The moon hung high in the night sky, dotted with stars. A cool breeze blew past, stirring up waves. The stars scattered their silver splendor, making the entire bullfighting palace untainted by a speck of dust. It gave people a feeling of unparalleled beauty. Yi Xian stood alone under the stars of the heavens. He raised his head to look at the sky, his eyes drifting about. The hair that hung behind his head rippled in the breeze, and his entire body emitted a heavy aura. Heavenly Cycle Star Formation. Yi Xian muttered to himself. His calm expression gradually turned serious as he began to mumble. In front of the Nether River Patriarch, Yi Xian appeared very strong and confident. It was only in the dead of the night, when he was alone, that his heavy emotions were exposed. Just as the Nether River Patriarch had said, the ancient demon court was extremely powerful. It was not something that the Celestial Court could resist. When the Myriad Demon Conference began, they would definitely attack the Celestial Court. Whether it was for the primordial violet chi, or for the ancient demon court, the two celestial emperors of the demon race would never tolerate the existence of Yi Xian and the Celestial Court. The Celestial Court had 5 demi-saints. Each of them had extraordinary battle prowess. However, the ancient demon court had 2 celestial emperors and dozens of demi-saints. There was also the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation, which was the most terrifying. As the saying goes, one can know the whole leopard from a single spot. Back then, Yi Xian had seen Qiyu summon the 12 Divine Fiends Capital Formation. With just a glance, Yi Xian knew that this formation was extremely terrifying. It was not something that he could resist. Although the massive Heavenly Cycle Stars Formation could not compare to the massive 12 Divine Wraith Formation, the massive Heavenly Cycle Stars Formation was known as one of the 3 ultimate formations of the heavens and earth. Donghuang Tai was a huge problem. Moreover, he had the Donghuang Bell and was in an invincible position. If he activated the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation, how could the Celestial Court resist? If you don't want to be weaker than others, you have to have the same means to resist. However, how can the Celestial Court resist the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation of the ancient demon court? Yi Xian frowned. He was stumped by this problem. Preparing for a rainy day and anticipating the enemy's moves had always been Yi Xian's principle. If he did not make sufficient preparations, he would have died many times over. Hoping that the Nether River Patriarch would become a saint? This was not realistic. Although Yi Xian had lent the primordial violet chi to him, Yi Xian did not expect the Nether River Patriarch to become a saint at all. If one could become a saint by obtaining the primordial violet chi, there would be no such thing as the destined saint. Thud, thud, thud. A series of light footsteps came from behind Yi Xian. This also brought Yi Xian back to reality. He did not need to look to know who it was. Are you worried about the ancient demon court? The Empyrean fairy walked behind Yi Xian and gently draped a coat over Yi Xian. A look of guilt flashed across her eyes. I'm sorry. I've begged Master before, but she. As Niwa's disciple, how could the Empyrean fairy not know the pressure Yi Xian was under? She had secretly gone to see Niwa, but Niwa refused to see her. Clearly, it was impossible for her to agree to the Empyrean fairy's request. The ancient demon court wanted to destroy the celestial court and Yi Xian. This was a matter that was set in stone. How could the Empyrean fairy sit by and do nothing? However, she was too powerless. Niwa did not even meet her once. That Saint Niwa supports the ancient demon court. This is indeed a great pressure for me. However, saints are not allowed to take action. This is also a rule set by Hongjun back then. What I'm really worried about is the ancient demon court's heavenly cycle star formation, Yi Xian said in a low voice. Looking at Yi Xian's slightly bleak back, the Empyrean fairy's expression was bitter. Naturally, she knew how terrifying the heavenly cycle star formation was. When this formation was activated, billions of starlight would fall. Even saints would be wary of it. How could the 33 layers of the celestial court resist it? Husband, if you really want to resist this formation, you have to beg Tong Tian. Only the immortal slaying sword formation can be fearless of the heavenly cycle star formation. It can also help the celestial court survive this calamity, the Empyrean fairy said softly. Ha! Yi Xian suddenly turned his head. The corners of his mouth curled into a self-deprecating smile. He slowly shook his head at the Empyrean fairy and said, if this method really works, I would have borrowed the immortal slaying sword formation long ago. However, I have already drawn a clear line with Tong Tian. The immortals of the Jie sect have all left. If I pay him a visit, it will only make me a laughingstock in the 3 realms. Moreover, even if I shamelessly beg him, Tong Tian may not be willing to be involved in this conflict of the 3 realms. Yi Xian spoke tirelessly. He understood the situation very clearly. When the immortals of the Jie sect expressed goodwill to the ancient demon court, this also indirectly represented Tong Tian's attitude. But husband, you must know that in this world, only the 12 divine fiends formation and the immortal slaying sword formation can resist the heavenly cycle star formation. Otherwise, no quasi-saint can survive this formation, the Empyrean fairy said with a trembling voice, her face pale. In the past, Niwa had taught her. She had once heard Niwa mention these 3 great formations. It could be said that it was extremely difficult to break them. Even the saints had given them such high praise. This also proved how terrifying these 3 great formations were. Upon hearing the Empyrean fairy's words, Yi Xian frowned. How could he not know how terrifying the heavenly cycle star formation was? However, he really had no other choice now. The celestial court's foundation is too weak. The so-called heavenly protection formation is just a bluff. If the celestial court also had an eternal killing formation comparable to the shamans and demons, how could we have fallen into such a situation? Yi Xian said with a self-deprecating smile. Chapter 737. Don't worry, husband. Formations are created by people. Perhaps we can think of another way. The Empyrean fairy did not know how to comfort Yi Xian. She could only try to reassure him and hope that Yi Xian would not feel too pressured. What did you say? Suddenly, Yi Xian's eyes froze. He abruptly looked at the Empyrean fairy. This also stunned the Empyrean fairy. She did not know what had happened to Yi Xian. I said, perhaps we can think of another way. The Empyrean fairy bit her lip and said, not this one. The one before that. Yi Xian's eyes were deep and his voice trembled slightly. I said formations are created by people. What's wrong? Yes, that's the one. That's the one. Formations are also created by humans. Yi Xian's aura fluctuated to the extreme. His eyes shone with a terrifying light. He seemed to have thought of something and entered a state of agitation. Husband, what's wrong with you? The Empyrean fairy panicked when she saw Yi Xian's aura become extremely chaotic. She did not know what had happened to Yi Xian. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not answer the Empyrean fairy's question. His expression constantly changed. Sometimes it was disappointment, sometimes it was excitement. In the end, it became regret and reluctance. In the past, I once had a close friend. His talent in formations was unparalleled. He could even be said to be unprecedented. He was a peerless genius. If he were still alive, he would definitely be able to create formations comparable to the 3 great formations of destruction. Yi Xian let out a long sigh. A figure in snow-white clothes appeared in his mind. He seemed to be nodding and smiling at him. There's actually someone like that in the world? What's his name? The Empyrean fairy asked in surprise. Lu Bai. Yi Xian paused between each word. His eyes were slightly dazed as he said, a peerless genius. A name that is unknown to the world. Not only was he a close friend of mine, Yi Xian, but he was also the creator of the Immortal defying formation. Buzz. Yi Xian waved his hand in the air, and the Immortal defying formation rippled out. It emitted specks of starlight in the void. This made the Empyrean fairy stunned. The Empyrean fairy had always thought that the Immortal defying formation was created by Yi Xian. She didn't know how many great enemies he had fended off. However, only today did she know that the Immortal defying formation was the work of someone else. And this person was the peerless genius Yi Xian spoke of, Lu Bai. It's a pity that when Brother Bai completed the Immortal defying formation, his soul was scattered and he died. If he was still alive, our celestial court's peerless killing formation would shock the 3 realms. Why would we be afraid of the ancient demon court's heavenly cycle star formation? Yi Xian clenched his fists. There was a touch of bitterness in his eyes. Suddenly, the Empyrean fairy spoke softly. There was a touch of gentleness in her eyes. Husband, do you miss this close friend of yours? Yi Xian laughed self-deprecatingly. The dead cannot be revived unless I can reverse time and heaven and earth. Only then can I gather the fragments of his soul that were scattered in the world. Only then can he be revived. However, if I want to reverse time and heaven and earth, I must become the saint of all beings. Only then can I achieve my goal. Husband, look at what this is. Suddenly, the Empyrean fairy flipped her hand, and an ancient bronze mirror appeared. It was emitting turbid light, and the surrounding void was slightly distorted. The Kunlun mirror? Yi Xian was puzzled as he looked at the Empyrean fairy's Kunlun mirror. He didn't know why the Empyrean fairy had taken it out. Although the Kunlun mirror can't bring the white-robed brother back to life, the Kunlun mirror has the ability to rewind time and space. It can recreate the scene of the past and let my husband and your close friend reunite. The 9 heavenly maidens smiled. The Kunlun mirror was a natural spiritual treasure. It was extremely famous in the 3 realms. Legend had it that it could travel through time and space. However, this legend was far too exaggerated. Its true use was to reverse time and space, allowing one to know what had happened in the past. The Empyrean fairy could sense Yi Xian's pressure. She also missed Lu Bai. As his wife, there was nothing she could do right now. If the Kunlun mirror could allow Yi Xian to see his old friend alive, it might be able to help Yi Xian recover from his dejection. Reverse time and space. Return to its origin? Yi Xian muttered to himself as he looked at the Kunlun mirror in the Empyrean fairy's hand. His eyes flickered with a complicated light. After a dozen seconds, he finally received the Kunlun mirror. Thank you, Yi Xian said solemnly. You and I were once husband and wife. You don't have to be so courteous with me. The Empyrean fairy smiled faintly. The moon on this day was very round. The 2 figures snuggled together under the moonlight. It was as if an eternal picture had been frozen in time. Perhaps it would forever be engraved in Yi Xian's memory. The celestial court was operating as per normal. Although there were quasi-saints visiting the celestial court from time to time to inquire about the primordial violet chi, they were intimidated by the celestial court, and could only return helplessly. 3 quasi-saints presided over the celestial court. Demon Master Kuan Peng, Mahamayuri, and the dreaded Taishang Laojun. Just these 3 alone were enough to intimidate all quasi-saints. They did not dare to act rashly in the celestial court. Yi Xian was in seclusion. No one knew when he would come out of seclusion. However, the attention of the 3 realms was now all on the ancient demon court. They did not pay much attention to Yi Xian. After all, a celestial court that was about to be destroyed would not attract anyone's attention at all. In the bullfighting palace, the retrograde passage was opening. The door to the human realm appeared. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. Fatso Huang accompanied him. Obviously, Yi Xian wanted to go to the human realm. The human realm was his route. Liu Bai was also buried in the human realm. Sir, we should set off. Fatso Huang reminded him in a low voice. How many years has it been? I can't remember clearly. It should be tens of thousands of years. Yi Xian muttered to himself. It had been tens of thousands of years since he last returned to the human realm. The people and things of the past should have long disappeared in the human realm. He did not know what the human realm had become after tens of thousands of years. Let's go. Yi Xian strolled in. Fatso Huang quickly followed. As the door of the retrograde passage closed, the two of them finally disappeared from the bullfighting palace. 100,000 years, 100,000 years. After 100,000 years, Yi Xian returned to his homeland again. However, he had already become a sage-to-be. He was no longer the youth of the past. However, in the human realm after 100,000 years, were there any people or things that he was familiar with? The human realm. The sky was boundless, and the ground was vast. Towering mountains rose from the ground. The three heavens' ancient trees covered the mountains. Although the spiritual qi drifting between heaven and earth was not as dense as in the earth immortal realm, it gave people a sense of tranquility and peace. Buzz! The void rippled, and an illusory door flickered in the sky. As the two figures walked out of the door, the boundless sky suddenly flashed with lightning. There was also a terrifying sound of thunder exploding, and even the heaven and earth trembled slightly. Freeze! Heaven and earth stagnated with a finger. The flashing lightning in the sky had already dissipated. Obviously, when Yi Xian appeared in the human realm, he, as a sage-to-be, naturally posed a great threat to this part of the world. However, under his Dharma and Tao, this part of the world was instantly suppressed. Above the sky between heaven and earth, Yi Xian's Dharma eyes shone through the entire human realm. A large number of scenes also appeared in Yi Xian's eyes. Chapter 738. Is this really a reincarnation? After leaving his homeland for 100,000 years, when Yi Xian stepped into the mortal world again, even though he saw the scene of the mortal world, he was already muddle-headed. According to Yi Xian's guess, after 100,000 years, the mortal world might have already entered an era where technology and cultivation coexisted. It would show a bright and prosperous era, and he would never see the people and things he was once familiar with. But what did he see? There was no brilliant technology, nor were there any cultivators. The whole mortal world was still the same as it was before he ascended. If there was any difference, it would be that the terrain of the mortal world was not the same as it was 100,000 years ago. The area of the mortal world had increased by 10 times. People's clothes were more old-fashioned, but the tall buildings were rising. The familiar sound of car horns came to Yi Xian's ears. There were also beautiful young people walking in the bustling metropolis. Nothing had changed, but it seemed that everything had changed. In Yi Xian's perception, the spiritual qi of this world was abundant, but he could not sense the existence of any cultivators. His Dharma eyes were like the sky, shining all over the mortal world. Yi Xian's eyes trembled slightly. When he returned to the mortal world again, there was no cultivator in the mortal world. However, this was not the most surprising thing to him. What shocked Yi Xian the most was that everything in the mortal world had returned to its original point. Even Jiangnan City, which had been annihilated in history, was intact as before. Why is it like this? Yi Xian murmured to himself. His eyes were extremely confused. He could not understand why after 100,000 years, the mortal world was still the same as before. Even though he had returned to the mortal world twice before, the mortal world had changed rapidly. Whether it was technology or cultivation, they were all at their peak. But today, after 100,000 years, the mortal world had returned to its original point again. Life and death alternate, and all things reincarnate. Even history is extremely similar. Even though Yi Xian was now a sage-to-be, He really could not understand why the mortal world was exactly the same as when he left. This was also a big question in his mind. It wasn't just Yi Xian. Fatso Huang was also in a daze. He was currently looking around the human world and had fallen into an indescribable state. Go, Yi Xian said solemnly. He strode forward with great questions in his heart. This also caused Fatso Huang to quickly come to his senses. He quickly caught up with Yi Xian, and the two of them disappeared into the boundless sky. Jiangnan City. July was fiery and summer was scorching. However, the sky had just begun to brighten, and the morning air was filled with coolness. The rising sun had just risen from the east, which also meant that a new day had begun. The streets were clean and tidy, with pedestrians in twos and threes. There were peddlers selling breakfast on both sides of the street from time to time. There were also students and office workers quickly eating the food in their hands, and then hurrying away from the stalls. Two figures walked over from the end of the street. However, the two of them were wearing ancient clothes, which made them look extremely different. However, the two of them had an indescribable temperament, which attracted the gazes of the people who were eating on both sides of the street. Yi Xian strolled on the familiar street, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. His eyes were unusually deep. Although there was no aura around him, he gave people a sense of tranquility and peace. Ethereal like smoke, surrounded by clouds and mist, Yi Xian had an indescribable temperament, which was very attractive. Some young women, who were at work, even cast sidelong glances at Yi Xian. Even some young girls who had just fallen in love frequently stole glances at Yi Xian. Although Yi Xian did not show his aura, he had cultivated for 100,000 years and entered the sage-to-be realm. His life level was much higher than that of ordinary people. Naturally, he had an indescribable attraction to ordinary people, which was most directly reflected by these girls. Little brother, can I add you as a friend on QQ? A youthful girl, who was at the most beautiful age, hesitated for a moment, but still bit her lips and walked quickly to Yi Xian. She took out a phone and looked at Yi Xian expectantly. Yi Xian's thoughts turned. He looked at the girl in front of him with a slightly blank expression. Only then did he understand what she meant. This made Yi Xian slightly startled, and he did not know how to respond. It was no wonder that Yi Xian was like this. After 100,000 years of fighting and killing, he had long forgotten the trivial matters of the boundless secular world. How could he have experienced such a thing? Go away. Suddenly, Fatso Huang strode over and stared fiercely at the girl. Originally, Fatso Huang did not look like a good person. At this moment, when he put on a ferocious look, the girl was immediately frightened and retreated. You, what are you doing? The girl's small face was pale. She was obviously frightened by Fatso Huang. However, they were in broad daylight, and in a society ruled by law. The girl did not believe that Fatso Huang would dare to do anything to her. Stupid girl, do you believe it or not? Fatso Huang was not someone who would go easy on girls. He also knew that Yi Xian had just returned to the human world. How could he be interested in these little girls? They still had serious business to attend to. How could they waste time because of a little girl they did not know? Just as Fatso Huang was about to push the girl away, Yi Xian's voice sounded. Back down. Fatso Huang was startled, then smiled flatteringly and retreated behind Yi Xian. Little girl, how old are you to ask for a stranger's contact number? You should focus on your studies. In the future, don't do such rude things. Yi Xian said softly. I'm not a little girl. I'm already 18 this year. I'm an adult. Old uncle, if you don't want to give it to me, then don't give it to me. I don't want it. After the initial shyness, the girl had returned to her original youthful personality. Then she quickly walked away. Children these days. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, then smiled helplessly. However, the appearance of this girl seemed to have rejuvenated his young heart. Stupid uncle, old uncle. You're clearly not old yourself, but you call me a little girl. The girl angrily kicked the stones on the side of the road. She was extremely disappointed that she did not get Yi Xian's contact number. After all, this was the first time she took the initiative to ask for a boy's contact number. However, she was rejected by him. This made her extremely embarrassed and angry. But this stupid uncle is so handsome. The girl bit her lips slightly as a trace of shyness flashed across her face. She secretly looked at Yi Xian again, but happened to meet Yi Xian's gaze. This frightened her so much that she hurriedly turned her head, her heart thumping wildly. "Sir, this little girl has taken a liking to you. Why don't you take her in?" Fatso Huang smiled flatteringly. It was rare for him to joke with Yi Xian. Clearly, Fatso Huang was in a good mood after returning to the human world. "You rascal, you're becoming more and more impudent. Even you're teasing me now. It seems that if I don't supervise your cultivation properly, your true nature will be exposed again." Yi Xian scolded jokingly. Chapter 739. Oh, please don't torture me. It took me tens of thousands of years to reach the level of Daluo Jingxian. Please let me enjoy it for a few days, Fatso Huang said with a flattering smile. Hearing Fatso Huang's flattering words, Yi Xian sighed and said, "Yes, it's been 100,000 years. Perhaps the human world is our root. Only in the human world can we relax." Their voices were not loud, but it fell into the ears of the peddlers and diners on both sides of the street, which made these people look at them with strange expressions. They can't be lunatics, can they? They don't look like it. Although they are wearing ancient clothes, maybe they are shooting a movie? There are so many lunatics these days. Didn't you hear what they were talking about? Daluo Jingxian, and 100,000 years. Do they really think they are shooting a Xianxia TV series? The diners and peddlers on both sides of the street were whispering. Obviously, they regarded the two as lunatics. However, they would never know that the two people in front of them were existences that they could not imagine. "Let's go." The discussion of the crowd naturally could not escape Yi Xian's ears, but he would not lower himself to the level of mortals, because he came to Jiangnan City only to see why the history of the human world had returned to the original point. Yi Xian strolled forward, and Fatso Huang followed behind. The two gradually disappeared into the street against the morning sun. However, the morning sun cast long and narrow shadows on the two, as if it was witnessing their arrival. Time could erase everything and take away anything. However, the only thing that didn't change was the memories hidden deep within one's mind. In Yi Xian's memory, Jiangnan City was his home, and it was also his hometown where he was born and raised. There were his laughter and his joys and sorrows here. He had once brought his little sister to play on the streets, and he had once laughed and played with his little brother in the wheat fields. He had also once experienced his first love here, and had even spent a period of his youthful and ignorant youth here. Everything had changed. Maybe it was just a moment of prosperity. 100,000 years would eventually obliterate the people and things of the past. His relatives and friends were gone. Even though history had returned to the original point and Jiangnan City had not changed, he would never see the people of the past again. Strolling through the boundless secular world, and experiencing the joys and sorrows of mortals, Yi Xian's thoughts drifted. If the history of the mortal world really returned to its original point, then would the people of the past reappear? Home. It was a simple word, but to Yi Xian, it had been far, far too long since he had heard it. He had also not thought about it for a very, very long time, because this word was far, far away from him. It was so far away that he would never be able to remember it until he returned to the human world. In the shanty town of Jiangnan City, this was still a gathering place for the poor, and it was also Yi Xian's home in the past. Along the bumpy road, Yi Xian walked according to the memory in his mind. Fatso Huang strolled behind him with a rare solemnity on his face, because he knew that this was Yi Xian's former hometown and the place where he lived. The arrival of the two people in ancient clothes naturally surprised the people, who were just about to go to work in the morning. However, everyone was busy with their lives. Although they were a little curious about the two people, they did not care, and were busy with their own things. A mottled iron gate was engraved with the traces of time. The walls on both sides were mottled and had many cracks, proving that this house had been around for some time. It was exactly the same. Even the old pagoda tree in front of the door was exactly the same as it was 100,000 years ago. Yi Xian stopped under the tree and stared at everything in front of him in a daze. He could not come back to his senses for a long time, because he could not believe that the mortal world, after 100,000 years, would restore his former home. Was there really such a thing as the reincarnation of all things? Mom, I'm hungry. Suddenly, a voice as pleasant as an oriole's came from behind the iron gate. This caused Yi Xian's thoughts to turn. However, his body trembled slightly, proving that his heart was in turmoil. This voice? Yi Xian muttered with a trembling voice. He walked step by step towards his former home. When he pressed his hand on the mottled iron gate, he did not push it open. If history returned to its original point, then was the voice that came from his home the most important person to him in the past? Yi Xian pressed his hand on the iron gate. He really did not dare to push it open, because he was afraid that the person he saw would not be the person he wanted to see. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. In the past 100,000 years, there was nothing in the world that Yi Xian didn't dare to do. However, right now, he didn't dare to push open the iron door in front of him. Sir, go in and take a look. Perhaps sensing Yi Xian's struggle and hesitation, Fatso Huang softly advised him. Creak. The thin iron gate was finally pushed open by Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face was slightly pale as he looked at the scene behind the iron gate. He saw a young girl sitting in the courtyard, looking at Yi Xian in shock and panic. Boom. As if struck by lightning, as if his soul had exploded, Yi Xian felt all the pores on his body stand on end. Even the indestructible true spirit in his sea of consciousness was extremely stagnant. Suddenly, Yi Xian took a step forward, and a trembling voice came from his mouth. He abruptly appeared in front of the young girl, and pulled her into his embrace. Big brother, I missed you so much. Yi Xian hugged the young girl tightly. His eyes were somewhat moist, and he fell into an indescribable state. Suddenly, the young girl let out an ear-piercing scream. Her thin and weak body kept struggling in Yi Xian's arms as she let out a terrified cry. Let go of me. Big brother, save me. Thump, thump, thump. A flurry of footsteps sounded, and a young man walked out from the inner room. His face was covered in flour, and he held a rolling pin in his hand. When he saw a stranger in his home, and pulled his little sister into his arms, the young man roared angrily, and swung the rolling pin at Yi Xian. Bastard, let go of my little sister. As the young man spoke, the rolling pin in his hand kept swinging at Yi Xian, hitting Yi Xian's body. This caused Fatso Huang's expression to change drastically. A speck of immortal light appeared at his fingertips, as if he was about to attack in the next moment. Unfortunately, before Fatso Huang could make a move, Yi Xian finally came to his senses, perhaps because of the young man's attacks. This caused the young girl to escape from his arms and hide behind the young man in panic. Who are you? Why have you appeared in my home? The young man shielded his little sister behind him and roared angrily at Yi Xian with the rolling pin in his hand. At this moment, Yi Xian looked at the siblings in confusion. His gaze gradually became clear, and a trace of bitterness flashed past his eyes. They were too similar, simply too similar. The siblings in front of him were 60% similar to Yi Ling, and Yi Ping in the past. However, Yi Xian was too agitated just now and mistook the young girl for Yi Ling. Now that he had come to his senses, he realized that the other party was not Yi Ling. Chapter 740. What are your names? Yi Xian asked softly. My name is Chu Tian. She is my sister Chu Yu. What do you want? Young Chu Tian said fiercely. He even waved his rolling pin, as if he was trying to intimidate Yi Xian. Chu Tian? Chu Yu. Yi Xian muttered to himself. Then he laughed at himself. So they really weren't his family. Everything was in the past. His so-called family didn't have anyone from the past. What's wrong? What happened? An anxious voice sounded from within the house. A middle-aged woman quickly walked out. When Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged woman, he was completely stupefied on the spot. How is this possible? How can they be so alike? At this moment Fatso Huang screamed in horror. Although 100,000 years had passed, Fatso Huang had interacted with Yi Xian's family many times. At this moment, this middle-aged woman's appearance was 80% similar to Yi Xian's mother. This was simply inconceivable to Fatso Huang. Mom! This person barged into our house and bullied little sister. Hurry up and report this to the police, Chu Tian said anxiously. He was afraid that these two people would harm his family. What? Chu Tian's mother's expression changed drastically. She quickly looked at Yi Xian and Chu Tian. However, when she saw Yi Xian's bitter eyes, she was stunned. She didn't take out her phone to report this. She didn't know why. But when Chu Tian's mother saw Yi Xian, she suddenly felt very close to him. This feeling came out of nowhere, but it was the truest feeling Chu Tian's mother had. Young man, are you really a bad person? Chu Tian's mother's lips trembled slightly. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't seem to hear Chu Tian's mother's question. He stared blankly at Chu Tian's mother. A trace of sadness flashed across his eyes. They're too alike. They're simply too alike. Could it be that after 100,000 years, it's not just heaven and earth that's reincarnated? Even all living things will be reincarnated? Yi Xian muttered to himself. There are always two similar flowers in the world, one withering and the other blooming. Is this really the case? Yi Xian kept mumbling to himself, as he fell into a state of confusion. Mom, this person must be crazy. Hurry up and report this to the police, Chu Tian said anxiously. It was not against the law for a lunatic to hurt people. He would only be sent to a mental hospital. He did not want his family to face someone who was suspected of having mental problems. Second brother, I don't think he's crazy, Chu Yu weakly said from behind him. After experiencing the initial panic and fear, she calmed down and looked at Yi Xian with curiosity. If he's not crazy, then what is he? He was just bullying you, Chu Tian reprimanded in a low voice. Young man, what's wrong with you? Mrs. Chu said softly. She believed in her intuition that this strange young man before her was definitely not a bad person. Perhaps it was because of Mrs. Chu's words that Yi Xian woke up from his stupor. He tried his best to calm down, and his face finally returned to normal. This used to be my home. It's just that I haven't been back for many years, so I was a little agitated. Please don't take offense, Yi Xian said softly. Liar. This shantytown was only built a little more than 10 years ago. It has always been where we lived. Before this, it was just a piece of wilderness. How could it be your home? Chu Tian said coldly, treating Yi Xian as a liar. Young man, where's your family? Do you have any way to contact them? Auntie can help you contact them, Mrs. Chu said softly. Although she did not think that Yi Xian was a bad person, it seemed that he had some mental problems. He must have been separated from his family and appeared here. Family? Yi Xian asked himself blankly. Then he laughed self-deprecatingly and muttered, I walk the path alone. I have no family. My family is long gone. Lunatic. Chu Tian's expression changed slightly when he heard Yi Xian's crazy words. Clang. Suddenly, the sound of a door being broken came from outside the door. The half-closed iron door was kicked open, and a dozen burly men broke in. Behind them was an enchanting and sexy woman, who slowly walked into the Chu family. You bunch of poor bastards, you still haven't moved out? A burly man with a fiendish expression was holding a stick in his hand as he shouted arrogantly. He looked at Mrs. Chu fiercely with a sinister smile on his face. You, don't mess around. Otherwise I'll report you. Chu Tian's expression changed drastically when he saw these people suddenly appear. He held the rolling pin in his hand, and hurriedly protected his younger sister and mother. His face was flushed red as he shouted angrily at these people. Hee! A sweet and charming laughter came. The seductive woman was about 20 years old. She was laughing coquettishly as she walked toward Mrs. Chu. Little brother, it's not good to have such a bad temper. I gave your family a chance, but you forced me to be rough. You can't blame me for this. The enchanting woman had a curvaceous figure, and could be called a beauty. At this moment, she arrived in front of Chu Tian. With a simple pull, she snatched the rolling pin from Chu Tian's hand. Chu Tian staggered and fell to the ground. Obviously, this woman was also a martial artist. How could Chu Tian be a match for her? Miss Lin, your Lin family is a big family. We're just poor people. Why do you have to be so aggressive? Mrs. Chu said with a bitter smile. Auntie, you can't say that. Lin Qianqian may not be a good person, but I'm definitely not a bad person. Half a year ago, I informed you that this shanty town would be transformed into the largest entertainment city in Jiangnan City. I also gave you a large sum of money for the relocation, but you refused and insisted on staying here. Look at your neighbors, haven't they already accepted it, and are moving out one by one? Lin Qianqian laughed coquettishly, but her beautiful eyes gradually became sharp. Miss Lin, you know that the money you gave us is indeed a lot, but the housing prices in Jiangnan City are too expensive. If we really move out, we won't be able to buy a house with that money. Won't we lose our home? Mrs. Chu said bitterly. That's none of my business. The approval has already been given. In 7 days, this shantytown will be demolished. Today, I'm only here to inform you. If you still refuse to leave, then don't blame me, Lin Qianqian, for being impolite. Lin Qianqian's smile disappeared and her voice turned cold. We won't move. You don't have to say anything. Mrs. Chu looked weak, but her heart was strong. Otherwise, how could she raise 3 children? If she lost her home because of Lin Qianqian's threat, she would never forgive herself. You're not taking the face I gave you? Lin Qianqian reprimanded. She was the eldest daughter of the Lin family. Everyone had to be respectful to her. Now that Mrs. Chu dared to refuse her, it made her angry. Old thing, I think you're tired of living. A burly man smiled sinisterly and strode toward Chu Li's mother. It seemed like he was determined to teach her a lesson. The siblings cried out in alarm and hurriedly tried to stop him. Chapter 741. Bang Bang. The burly man was burly and proficient in martial arts. The brother and sister were only teenagers, so they were kicked to the ground by the burly man, causing them to cry out in pain. What are you doing? Seeing her children injured, Mrs. Chu asked in a trembling voice. However, the burly man was still grinning, and had already arrived in front of Mrs. Chu. What are we doing? If I don't teach your family a lesson, you won't know who's in charge of Jiangnan City. The burly man grinned and swung his fist at Mrs. Chu. Kill him. Suddenly, a calm voice quietly sounded in the courtyard of the Chu family. It was also at this moment that something extremely terrifying happened. Pfft! A hand pierced through the burly man's chest, causing blood to spurt out onto the ground. As Fatso Huang pulled his hand out indifferently, a sinister smile appeared on his face, and he threw the burly man to the ground, as if he was throwing trash. Pfft! Blood continued to spurt out of the man's mouth, mixed with pieces of his internal organs. His entire body twitched on the ground like a dead dog. Clearly, his heart had been pierced through by Fatso Huang, and he was done for. It's been a long time since I killed someone with my own hands. I really miss it. Fatso Huang's face was intoxicated. He took a deep breath of the smell of blood floating in the air. The sinister and cruel expression on his face was simply terrifying. He killed someone. Chuyu screamed. After all, she was only a young girl, and had never seen such a terrifying thing. Not only Chuyu, but Chu Tian and Mrs. Chu were also pale at this moment. They retreated in extreme fear. The mother and son of the Chu family did not expect that these 2 people who suddenly appeared would kill someone without any hesitation. This was simply unimaginable. Killing someone in such a bloody way. You should change this habit of yours. Yi Xian frowned slightly. It only took a thought to kill a mortal, but Fatso Huang insisted on doing it himself, and causing such a bloody scene. This made Yi Xian extremely speechless. Fatso Huang gave a flattering smile, and hurriedly bowed to Yi Xian. Sir, I haven't exercised for a long time. I won't dare to do it again next time. Sigh. Yi Xian smiled helplessly, and did not say anything. After all, Fatso Huang was his most trusted subordinate. He could not blame him for such a small matter. Who are you? At this time, Lin Qianqian finally recovered from her fear. When she saw her subordinates dying in the hands of Fatso Huang, she fell into a state of panic, and only woke up now. It wasn't that Lin Qianqian hadn't killed anyone before, and it wasn't that she hadn't seen dead people before, but such a gory way of killing made her hair stand on end. Terrifying, too terrifying. His palm pierced through her chest, and he killed her so casually, as if he was stepping on an ant. This made Lin Qianqian extremely terrified. Get lost. Fatso Huang's cold voice was like a thunderbolt exploding in Lin Qianqian's ears. This also made her take 3 steps back and look at Yi Xian and Fatso Huang in horror. You're ancient warriors? Lin Qianqian screamed in horror, as if she had discovered something extremely terrifying. Ancient warriors? Fatso Huang smiled contemptuously. The so-called ancient warriors were not even ants in front of Yi Xian. Fatso Huang did not bother to explain to Lin Qianqian. What are you waiting for? Kill them. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He was extremely impatient with these flies. He did not have time to waste with an ant like Lin Qianqian. Yes, sir. Fatso Huang smiled ferociously. A spot of immortal light appeared on his fingertip, as if he was going to kill Lin Qianqian and the others in the next moment. No. Suddenly, before Fatso Huang could do anything, Chu Machen's mother rushed to Yi Xian and pleaded in a panic. No, don't kill them. I beg you. Yi Xian was slightly stunned by Chu Machen's mother's request. He suddenly realized that this was not the Earth immortal world, but the human world. Chu Machen's mother and the others were just mortals. They had never seen a bloody massacre. Perhaps Yi Xian had been away from the human world for too long, but he was too familiar with killing. Driven by instinct, he naturally did not take it seriously. However, in the eyes of Chu Machen's mother and son, it was too terrifying. Let them go. Yi Xian said softly, which disappointed Fatso Huang. The spot of immortal light disappeared quietly. Chu Machen heaved a sigh of relief. If Lin Qianqian and the others really died here, it would definitely be a disaster. You just wait. I will definitely not let you go. Mortals were mortals after all. They could not imagine Yi Xian's level. Chu Machen did not know that she had just walked through the gates of hell. At this moment, she left with her subordinates and hurriedly left the Chu residence. How troublesome. Looking at Lin Qianqian's back as she left, Yi Xian understood the principle of cutting weeds without removing the roots. When the spring breeze came, it would grow again. He secretly gave Fatso Huang a look, which made Fatso Huang smile ferociously. He naturally knew what Yi Xian meant. Sir, I'm going to see an old friend. I'll find you later. Fatso Huang bowed and slowly walked out of the Chu residence. Yi Xian naturally knew what Fatso Huang was going to do. This was what he had instructed Fatso Huang to do. This, big brother. Are you an ancient warrior? Chu Yu asked cautiously. The burly man's corpse was still lying in the courtyard, which proved that what had just happened was not fake. Young man, you should leave quickly. You killed the Lin family's people. They will not let you go. Chu Machen's mother was the elder after all. She knew that things were going to get serious. She hurriedly advised Yi Xian. Unfortunately, Yi Xian slowly shook his head. He did not leave. With a light flick of his sleeve, the bloody corpse on the ground turned into ashes. Even the bloodstains on the ground disappeared. Such a miracle simply stunned the mother and son of the Chu family. The brother and sister looked at Yi Xian with shining eyes, as if they were looking at an immortal. You are an immortal? Chu Tian asked in a trembling voice. An immortal? Yi Xian whispered to himself. A trace of helplessness flashed across his eyes. He was not an immortal, but a real sage to be. How could an immortal compare to him? However, Yi Xian naturally would not explain to the mother and son of the Chu family. There was simply no need to. Perhaps, Yi Xian said ambiguously. Bang! Suddenly, Chu Tian knelt on the ground in excitement. He kept kowtowing to Yi Xian. His voice trembled as he said, Immortal above, please accept me as your disciple. Yi Xian was slightly stunned by this scene. He then smiled helplessly. When he gently flicked his sleeve, a breeze blew past, causing Chu Tian to stand up from his kneeling position. I have never accepted disciples. There is no need to mention this again. However, I would like to stay at home for a few days. As a reward, I will naturally teach you some body refining techniques. Yi Xian looked at Chu Tian's mother. Clearly he was asking for her opinion. Okay. Young man, you can stay here. It just so happens that my eldest son is boarding at the school. His room is still empty. Chu Tian's mother hurriedly replied. Chapter 742. The moon hung high in the night sky, and the world was silent. Yi Xian looked at the moonlight through the window. He was extremely calm, as if he was calmly sensing something. His entire body exuded an ethereal aura that made it difficult for others to grasp. Today, Yi Xian had decided to stay in the Chu clan on a whim. He was very curious about one thing. If the cycle of the heavens and the earth was a cycle of reincarnation, would someone similar to him still exist in this world? The mother and son of the Chu clan were vaguely similar to his family in the past. Not only in appearance, but also in character, they gave Yi Xian an extremely amiable feeling. However, although the mother and son of the Chu clan were similar to his family, they were also very different. Chu clan's mother had lost her husband at a young age and raised her 3 children alone. She did not experience the events of the Yi clan like he did in the past. Moreover, Yi Xian was very curious. If Chu clan's eldest son was boarding at the school, would that person be exactly like him in his youth? Filled with curiosity, Yi Xian decided to stay. He was prepared to personally meet Chu clan's eldest son. Perhaps Yi Xian also had a faint trace of anticipation in his heart. If the cycle of the heavens and the earth is a cycle of reincarnation, would another Lu Bai appear in this world? Yi Xian murmured to himself, a hint of hope in his eyes. Sir. Fatso Huang quietly appeared behind Yi Xian and bowed to Yi Xian. Is it all done? Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back and asked. Sir, don't worry. This subordinate did not leave any traces behind. That so-called Lin clan was completely annihilated, and that Lin Qianqian was personally killed by this subordinate. Fatso Huang seemed to be speaking casually. It was obvious that he was very familiar with this kind of small matter. After all, he had done this kind of shady business many times in the past. Yi Xian slowly nodded, then turned to look at Fatso Huang and said, the mother and son of the Chu clan are mortals after all. Only by completely annihilating them can they avoid the Lin clan's revenge. You did well. Hee. Thank you for the compliment, sir. This is what your subordinate should do. However, your subordinate has a great doubt in his heart. Why did this mother and son of the Chu family, and your former family members? Fatso Huang wanted to say something but stopped. He didn't continue. It was obvious that he was extremely surprised by this strange occurrence. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I'm also very curious. Logically speaking, after 100,000 years, the human realm should have developed to the pinnacle of both technology and cultivation. But why did it return to the starting point after 100,000 years? I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it, Fatso Huang said softly. You and I are like brothers. There's no harm in speaking your mind, Yi Xian said softly. 100,000 years have passed. Although the human realm is still the human realm, Sir and I have changed. This human realm is only a part of Sir's journey. I hope that Sir can understand that we are only passers-by in this human realm. Fatso Huang said in a rare serious tone. Haha. Looking at Fatso Huang's serious expression, Yi Xian laughed out loud. He naturally saw through Fatso Huang's worries. Clearly, he was afraid that Fatso Huang would have the heart to stay in the human realm after seeing the mother and son of the Chu family. You usually look cheerful and jovial, but when it comes to serious matters, your face turns solemn. Yi Xian smiled and teased. When I return to the human realm this time, I only have one thing in my heart. However, the human realm is our old home after all. Revisiting this old home can be considered as relaxing. Why would I really stay here? Your subordinate worries too much. Fatso Huang smiled flatteringly. He knew that he was thinking too much. Sky Blue Academy. There was an endless stream of cars and pedestrians in 2s and 3s. From time to time, various luxurious cars could be seen parked in front of Sky Blue Academy. There was also a large number of students coming in and out. Yi Xian stood in front of Sky Blue Academy. His eyes were somewhat absent-minded. His thoughts were drifting, and memories hidden in the depths of his mind were surging forth. Looking at things, thinking of people, or revisiting old home. Nothing seemed to have changed, but everything seemed to have changed. Yi Xian felt as if he was dreaming, and his heart also let out a long sigh. Yi Xian no longer hesitated. He slowly walked into Sky Blue Academy. This was because he didn't only come here to revisit old home, but also to do two things. A gentle breeze blew, and the willow trees swayed. Yi Xian walked in Sky Blue Academy. He felt the unique atmosphere of youth in the academy, and a sentimental smile gradually appeared on his face. In the depths of the academy, there was a 100-year-old locust tree rooted in the soil. Its umbrella-shaped tree shade blocked the scorching sun. When Yi Xian came under the tree, he touched the 100-year-old tree with both hands. His thoughts drifted again. Yi Xian vaguely remembered that when he was young, the thing he was most willing to do was to read under this old locust tree with Xia Qingzhu by his side. Unfortunately, things remained the same, but people had changed. The tree was no longer the tree of the past, and the people were no longer the people of the past. Everything could no longer go back. Even his childhood sweetheart had been strangled by his own hands. Yi Xian felt sentimental for a moment, then quietly left under the tree without any reluctance. Sky Blue Library. This was not only the library of Sky Blue Academy, but also the largest library in Jiangnan City. It contained all kinds of books, which was also one of the purposes of Yi Xian's visit. The library was very quiet, so quiet that there was no sound. Students were quietly reading in twos and threes. Even when Yi Xian entered the library, he didn't attract anyone's attention. Ancient and modern history. Yi Xian shuttled through the library, and finally found the book he was looking for. Then, he held the book in his hand and silently read it. If one wanted to understand the development of the world, books were undoubtedly the most direct way. Yi Xian also wanted to know why everything had returned to the starting point after 100,000 years. The book was very heavy. If an ordinary person read it, they might not be able to finish it in a month. But for Yi Xian, it only took a few minutes. The Great War of Destruction. When Yi Xian closed the ancient and modern history book, his eyes revealed a look of astonishment. He muttered to himself, as he already knew about the current history. According to the records of ancient and modern history, this world originally had immortal cultivators, and technology had developed to an extremely terrifying level. But when human civilization reached the extreme, they faced extinction. The war between immortal cultivators and human technology broke out. When immortal cultivators had the power to destroy the world, when ordinary people were unwilling to be enslaved by immortal cultivators, the conflict between the two almost destroyed the entire human world. It had to be said that when technology developed to the extreme, even immortal cultivators would suffer a disaster. This war completely wiped out immortal cultivators, and countless immortal cultivation secret books were burned. From then on, immortal cultivators no longer existed in this world, and immortal cultivators were also listed as a taboo by human beings. After the destruction, there was recovery. Although immortal cultivators were wiped out, human beings also suffered a disaster. Whether it was technology or culture, they all regressed to the extreme. This was also the reason why the human world returned to the starting point after 100,000 years. Chapter 743. However, there was one thing that Yi Xian didn't understand. Since history had regressed due to the War of Destruction, why was the human world so similar to 100,000 years ago? Yi Xian didn't want to think about it since he was only a passerby in the human world. He would leave soon. Why are you here? Suddenly, a clear female voice sounded in front of Yi Xian. This caused Yi Xian to return to his senses and look towards the person. When he saw the young girl in front of him, the corners of his mouth curved up into a smile. What a coincidence! Yi Xian nodded with a smile. The person in front of him was the girl who asked for his contact. She was clearly a student of Sky Blue Academy, and coincidentally met him here. Hello, I'm Li Ruodong. Nice to meet you. What's your name? The girl didn't expect to meet Yi Xian again. This made her laugh out loud. Yi Xian. Yi Xian said softly. Hearing Yi Xian's name, the young girl giggled and sat beside Yi Xian, as if she was familiar with him. The two of them could be considered to have officially met and started chatting. You are looking for Xian? Are you his older brother? As the two of them chatted, the young girl cried out in surprise. Only then did she realize that Yi Xian, who was sitting in front of her, actually looked extremely similar to their school hunk. TSK. They really look alike. The girl sized up Yi Xian and clicked her tongue in wonder. Where is he now? Yi Xian asked with a smile. Our school hunk Chu is obviously with school beauty Qing Xian. The girl giggled. Let's go. I'll bring you to him. As the young girl spoke, she pulled Yi Xian out of the library. This allowed Yi Xian to slowly follow her, but his eyes were abnormally deep. He could tell from the young girl's surprised tone that this Chu Xian should look somewhat similar to him. Sky Blue Academy, basketball court. A large number of cheers could be heard as the basketball court was surrounded by layers upon layers of people. When the young girl pulled Yi Xian and pushed through the crowd, they finally squeezed into the basketball court. Come on, there's only 1 minute left before the match ends. We'll get 2 more points. On the basketball court, there was an extraordinarily handsome young man. At this moment, he was dripping with sweat as he played the basketball. There was a vigorous aura around him as he cheered on his teammates. Okay, let's beat them up and get another 2 points. The young man's teammates echoed loudly. Go Xian. The cheerleaders outside the field were all young girls. At this moment, they were waving the garlands in their hands and cheering for the young man on the field. There was even an extremely pure and beautiful girl who was intertwining her fingers and looking at the young man who was sweating profusely on the field with admiration. Bang! Xian's figure was strong and vigorous. He passed 3 people on the court in succession, jumped vigorously under the sun, and directly dunked the basketball in his hand into the basket. The referee's whistle sounded, and the game finally ended. We won! Haha! On the field, Xian was lifted up high by his teammates, and then thrown into the air. The cheerleaders outside the field, and the pure girl jogged into the basketball court, cheering for their victory together. Did you see that? Your little brother is a famous person in our school. Li Ruodong's eyes were filled with little stars, looking at Xian on the basketball court with admiration. At this moment, Yi Xian looked at the young man on the field with deep eyes, and then lightly nodded. No one knew what he was thinking in his heart. Xian, your brother is here to see you. Li Ruodong shouted outside the field. This made Xian, who was drinking mineral water, slightly startled. He then looked towards the source of the voice. Here, here. Li Ruodong continuously waved her hands at Xian, which also made the young man see Yi Xian's existence. However, when Xian saw Yi Xian's appearance, his entire person was as if struck by lightning, fixed on the spot. Xian, when did you have a brother? How come I didn't know? Zhao Qingxian asked with a face full of surprise. She also looked towards Yi Xian, but when she saw Yi Xian, she was also slightly startled. This was because Yi Xian and her boyfriend actually looked 30 to 40% similar. At this moment, Yi Xian silently glanced at the young couple, then turned around and walked towards the field. This also made Xian instantly come back to his senses, a trace of bewilderment in his eyes. He quickly walked towards Yi Xian. Sky Blue Academy field. Who are you? When the young man arrived behind Yi Xian, he directly voiced the doubts in his heart. This was because the person in front of him actually looked 30 to 40% similar to him, and actually made his soul tremble. This kind of strange feeling made him extremely uncomfortable. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't answer the young man's question. He only silently looked at Xian, and didn't answer the young man's question for a long time. Similar in appearance but not in spirit. You're not me in the end. Yi Xian slowly shook his head, his voice was slightly hoarse. He originally thought that this young man might be a portrayal of him in the past. However, other than the young man's appearance being somewhat similar to him, no matter if it was his personality or gaze, he didn't have the style of his youth. Who exactly are you? I don't understand what you're saying. Xian frowned, feeling bewildered by this strange person before him. I just want to see if a person like me will appear in the human world if history returns to its original point. Unfortunately, you're not me. Yi Xian shook his head in disappointment. This was because he could see from the young man's eyes that he was brimming with youth, righteousness, and was a good young man. Moreover, he didn't have any shrewdness in his heart, not to mention hiding a dark side. This also allowed Yi Xian to prove one thing. Although history seemed to return to its original point, 100,000 years had passed in the human world. Although the scenery was similar, the people of the past definitely wouldn't appear again. It seems that I'm going to be disappointed in the end. Even if a person similar to Brother Bai really does exist in this world, he doesn't have the monstrous talent that Brother Bai had in the past. Yi Xian muttered to himself and even sighed. Yi Xian's purpose in coming to see Xian was very simple. He only wanted to verify a matter that he hoped for in his heart. He wanted to find a person similar to Lu Bai, because if history returned to its original point, perhaps Lu Bai could live in this world in another way. Unfortunately, after Yi Xian's verification, regardless of whether it was the mother and son of the Chu family, or Xian in front of him, although they looked extremely similar to him and his family in the past, they were still independent individuals and not people of the past. Based on this conclusion, the people of the past wouldn't appear again, and Lu Bai would never appear in this world again. Madman. After hearing Yi Xian's strange words, Xian was certain that there was definitely something wrong with Yi Xian's mind, and a wisp of caution appeared in his eyes. Xian, is he your friend? Zhao Qingxian walked over quickly and looked at Yi Xian with a face full of surprise. However, her appearance was very similar to Xia Qingzhu in her youth, and this caused Yi Xian to silently glance at this girl. Little brother, if you want to become a person above others, you must constantly strive for self-improvement. Otherwise, this girl will be a calamity for you in the future, and will make you wish you were dead. Yi Xian's eyes were very sharp, and he saw with a glance that this girl looked pure and innocent, but there was a wisp of arrogance in her eyes. If this youth couldn't become a person above others in the future, he would eventually be abandoned by this girl, due to the ripples in his sea of love. What nonsense are you talking about? Who are you? Xian's expression was angry. He was naturally very unhappy that his girlfriend was slandered like this. Unfortunately, since Yi Xian had verified that the people of the past wouldn't appear again, there was no need for him to continue speaking with this youth. His entire person quietly turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared. He disappeared. Is this a magic trick? This scene caused the girl to cry out in shock, and she continuously shook the youth's arm to ask. However, the youth was already stunned, and simply didn't dare to believe the scene he saw. Chapter 744. Yi Xian was slightly disappointed by the fact that the human world seemed to be the same as it was 100,000 years ago. However, it was only similar in spirit but not in form. Yi Xian had no more reluctance and finally left Jiangnan City. Although it was his hometown, there were no people from the past, which proved that the people of the past could not be reborn. The clouds were surging in the boundless sky. Yi Xian walked slowly, followed by Fatso Huang. They were heading to the place where Lu Bai was buried. Lu Bai, a person that Yi Xian admired very much. Back then, there was no road in heaven and earth, and the path to immortality was cut off. Lu Bai found another way, and created the blood and qi transportation method. He was an earth-shaking genius, and created the immortal defying formation, with a mortal body. 8 gates of life and death, immortal defying mortal. These 8 words were the profound meaning of the immortal defying formation, and also the pride that came from Lu Bai's bones. As a mere mortal, he had created a supreme formation that could suppress immortals. Lu Bai's talent could be said to be unprecedented. How many people in the world could compare with him? Yi Xian had no friends, but Lu Bai was an exception. Yi Xian really regarded him as a friend, and hoped that one day he could reverse time and space, and gather Lu Bai's scattered spirit between heaven and earth, and really bring him back to life. His soul had been scattered. This was a terrifying word, and it also meant true death. However, there was nothing absolute in this world. The so-called dispersing of one's soul meant that one's soul had been shattered into pieces. Even a saint would not be able to reassemble the fragments of one's soul. However, If one could reverse the cycle of time and space, and reassemble the fragments of one's soul with a supreme technique, Lu Bai would be able to reconstruct his soul and truly be reborn. Only the legendary saint of all saints would be able to reverse the cycle of time and space and bring Lu Bai back to life. The current Yi Xian was unable to do so, but he had been working hard in this direction the entire time. A valley sealed the sky and locked the earth. The valley was shrouded in clouds and mist, giving people a hazy and illusory feeling. It was impossible to see the inside of the valley, and this was the place where Lu Bai was buried. Qi, Yi Xian, and Yi Xian stepped into the sky. A speck of divine light grew on Yi Xian's fingertip. As he pointed his finger out, the clouds that filled the sky were blown away. The great formation that sealed this valley was also released at this moment. Yi Xian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He stared at the valley before him, and a wisp of desolation and loneliness appeared in his eyes. After that, he didn't hesitate to walk into the valley. In the depths of the valley was the bottom of a bottomless abyss. Other than some strange rocks, there was a large number of karst caves. Along the way, there were even plants and flowers growing vigorously. The vicissitudes of the world, the passage of time. If a person had been dead for 100,000 years, not to mention his grave, even his bones would have decayed into dust, truly disappearing from the world. Lu Bai's tombstone had been weathered away, and the once bulging grave mound was now level with the ground. If not for Yi Xian's deep memory of the place where Lu Bai was buried, it was likely that even if an outsider came here, they would not be able to discover that an earth-shattering figure had been buried here. Set up another tombstone for Brother Bai, Yi Xian said softly. Yes, sir. From the moment Yi Xian entered, Fatso Huang felt that something was wrong with Yi Xian's aura. He hurriedly bowed and left to carry out the order. Soon, a brand new tombstone took root in the bulging grave mound. This also caused Fatso Huang to silently retreat, leaving only Yi Xian here. Brother Bai, I've come to see you. The world was bleak and silent. Yi Xian was silent for a long time. He finally broke the silence and said this after a long time. Unfortunately, Lu Bai had been dead for 100,000 years. He would not appear in front of Yi Xian at all. Only Yi Xian could talk to himself in front of his grave. Brother Bai, I've come to see you after so long. Will you blame me? Yi Xian murmured in his sleep. He became somewhat depressed. He slowly sat cross-legged in front of Lu Bai's grave and fell into a monologue. The sun rose and the moon set, and the stars moved. A total of 7 days and nights had passed. Yi Xian started from the moment he entered the Earth Immortal realm, and recounted his experiences in the past 100,000 years. Now the ancient demon court wants to destroy the 33 celestial court. The Eastern Emperor Tai and Emperor Jun are the 2 celestial emperors of the demon race. They also have the support of Saint Nuwa. Even though I've taken Patriarch Nether River into the celestial court, it's just a drop in the bucket. Yi Xian's breath was very heavy. His brows were tightly knitted together. He did not need to hide anything in front of Lu Bai. He even spoke of his dangerous situation. If it's just the ancient demon court, then even if the Eastern Emperor Tai Yi and Di Jun join forces to fight me, I, Yi Xian, wouldn't be afraid. However, the heavenly cycle star formation is too terrifying, and it's one of the 3 great formations in the world. Even saints have to be wary of it. With my current cultivation, I'm unable to lead the heavenly court to fight against this formation. Yi Xian muttered in a heavy voice as he spoke out his thoughts one by one. Unfortunately, Lu Bai had died long ago. Yi Xian could only see his grave. How could Lu Bai appear to comfort Yi Xian? Whine. Suddenly, Yi Xian smiled arrogantly. Fatso Huang quietly appeared behind him and placed jars of immortal wine in front of Yi Xian. Then he quietly left the place. Brother Bai, you and I got drunk the last 2 times. Today, let's drink together again. Yi Xian lifted the jar and poured a large amount of immortal wine into his mouth. Then he sprinkled the rest of the wine on the grave. The heavenly cycle stars formation has the power of billions of stars. It can be said to be an ultimate formation that can destroy heaven and earth. People only know how terrifying the heavenly cycle stars formation is, But they don't know that if you, Lu Bai, were still alive in this world, would you even care about the heavenly cycle star's formation? The more wine he drank, the more drunk he became. Yi Xian's face was slightly red, as if he was really drunk. Perhaps he was venting the pressure he had been enduring for a long time in front of Lu Bai's grave. Only in front of Lu Bai's grave could Yi Xian speak his mind. The world was silent, and not a sound could be heard. Lu Bai's grave was full of jars of wine. Yi Xian leaned on Lu Bai's tombstone and looked up at the sky with misty eyes. A fierce look appeared in his eyes. Brother Bai, although you're no longer here, I still want to see you. Suddenly, Yi Xian supported himself on the ground with his arms and slowly stood up. An ancient bronze mirror had appeared in his hand. It was the Kunlun mirror, the Khanate spirit treasure. Time and space reverse returned to the origin. Yi Xian roared. The Kunlun mirror swayed in his hand. A dim yellow light bloomed on the surface of the mirror, and an extremely obscure aura suddenly erupted from the mirror. Rumble! The heavens and the earth shook as time and space turned upside down. The space in this area was distorted to the extreme. The Kunlun mirror suddenly expanded until it covered the entire valley. The dim yellow and turbid light distorted the space in this area. Chapter 745. Boom. Time seemed to be flowing backward and space seemed to be changing. Yi Xian only felt his vision blur, and the world was greatly distorted. When he opened his eyes again, the scene in front of him stunned him. Splash! A 1,000-foot waterfall poured down. The splashing water droplets were crystal clear. They smashed into the pool and splashed up a lot of waves, giving people a feeling of beauty. The waterfall fell 3,000 feet, as if the Milky Way fell from the 9th heaven. In the rumbling sound of the water, a white-robed man was sitting beside the pool with his back facing Yi Xian. His eyes were lowered, and he was staring at the array in his hand. Even if the 1,000-foot waterfall hit the pool and made a loud rumbling sound, it did not seem to disturb him. Brother Bai? Yi Xian looked at Lu Bai's back in a daze. He clenched his fists and his face became extremely red. When he opened and closed his eyes, they flickered with excitement. Brother Bai! Yi Xian suddenly shouted as he strode towards Lu Bai. He was so excited that he pressed his palm onto Lu Bai's shoulder. However, what happened in the next moment caused him to be stunned on the spot. That Yi Xian's palm passed through Lu Bai's body. But Yi Xian did not feel the slightest touch. Obviously, the Lu Bai in front of him was just a scene of time and space. It was just that the Kunlun mirror had backtracked the time and space of this world and reproduced the scene of the past. Yi Xian was stunned and speechless. Bitterness flashed in his eyes. He finally understood that Lu Bai had died long ago. The scene he saw now was just something that had happened in the past. The 8 gates of life and death, the reversal of heaven and earth. If you want to change life into death, you need the 36 stars of heavenly spirit and the 72 stars of earthly fiend to have the power to reverse heaven and earth. No, if the stars shift, the 8 gates of life and death will not be stable. This method still does not work. Lu Bai's brows were furrowed as he recalled time and space. His originally black hair had gradually withered, and there was a large amount of white hair mixed in. Clearly, he was painstakingly creating the inverse immortal array. No. Brother Yi is in the earth immortal realm. How can he be compared to those terrifying immortals? This immortal-defying array is for the weak to win against the strong. If it can't restrain these terrifying immortals, how can I pass this array to Brother Yi? Suddenly Lu Bai raised his head. His face was pale, and his eyes were bloodshot. His eyes were filled with unwillingness to accept his fate. At this moment, when Yi Xian saw Lu Bai's familiar face, he clenched his fists tightly. Blue veins bulged on his fists, and a trace of sorrow flashed across his eyes. Even though Yi Xian knew that what was unfolding before him was just the scene of Lu Bai creating the inverse immortal array in the past, when he saw how Lu Bai was dying in order to create the inverse immortal array, it made his heart ache. Heaven and earth reverse, sun and moon hang upside down, 8 gates of life and death, immortals become mortals. If I want to knock down the immortal realm, I'll have to disturb the so-called laws of heaven and earth. Then, I'll have to put the inverse immortal array in this position. Lu Bai's face was filled with joy. The array pin in his hand fell, and he began to draw the inverse immortal array again. Ugh! A mouthful of blood spurted out from Lu Bai's mouth. However, he did not seem to feel anything. Instead, he let out a wild laugh of joy and continued to draw the inverse immortal array. Brother Bai, why do you have to do this? Yi Xian looked at Lu Bai silently. He was also looking at the scene of Lu Bai creating the inverse immortal array in the past. That was because he could tell that Lu Bai was just a mortal back then. However, in order to draw the inverse immortal array, he had long forgotten to eat and sleep, and his body was deteriorating day by day. In the past, Yi Xian had heard from Shueji about Lu Bai's experiences in order to create the inverse immortal array. At that time, he was just lamenting over Lu Bai's feelings. But today, as he witnessed Lu Bai creating the inverse immortal array with his own eyes, Yi Xian's heart ached. Time passed by bit. Just like that, Yi Xian accompanied Lu Bai by his side, watching silently as Lu Bai tirelessly drew the inverse immortal array with all his might. In the karst cave, beside the pool, under the scorching sun, even though Yi Xian had found the body of a golden core immortal cultivator for Lu Bai in the past, Lu Bai's soul and body were gradually reaching the end of their lives under such endless effort. 10 years, 100 years, 200 years, all the way until 400 years. Haha! When the 400th year came, Lu Bai laughed wildly with excitement. He held the inverse immortal array in his hands and shed tears of excitement. However, blood kept flowing out of his mouth. His body was as thin and weak as a skeleton. He had truly reached the end of his life. It was only with the support of his strong will that he was able to survive until now. I did it. Heaven and earth reversed, the sun and the moon hung upside down, the 8 gates of life and death. The immortal became mortal. Lu Bai danced with joy like a child. He clutched the inverse immortal array in his hands tightly. Although his eyes were withered and lifeless, they were blooming with a majestic light that had never been seen before. Brother Bai! Yi Xian's eyes were filled with bitterness as he looked at the scene before him. If he'd known that the immortal defying formation was created like this, even if he didn't want it, he would have stopped Lu Bai. Unfortunately, time couldn't be reversed. What he saw before him was a scene from the past. Everything could no longer be reversed. One more step, just one more step, and the inverse immortal array will be truly completed. Then, my immortal soul will follow the inverse immortal array and accompany Brother Yi in his conquest of the boundless earth immortal realm. My heart's blood is the knot. My soul is the contract. Condense. Bang! Lu Bai laughed wildly. He broke open his heart with a finger, and a drop of essence blood appeared from his heart. It instantly sank into the inverse immortal array. This made the inverse immortal array shine brightly. 8 consecutive gates appeared in the void. Endless starlight fell from the sky, causing the inverse immortal array to sway in the void. When all this was done, Lu Bai slowly fell to the ground. His body gradually shone, and even his soul was fading. But even as his soul dissipated, he trembled slightly and handed the inverse immortal array to Shueji. He even told her to wait here for Yi Xian's return. Bang! His physical body collapsed and his soul dissipated. Lu Bai finally turned into a cloud of dust and dissipated between heaven and earth. Only his white robe fell to the ground. From then on, Lu Bai was no longer in this world. Brother Bai! The mountains and rivers shook, and the sky collapsed. When Yi Xian saw Lu Bai's soul dissipating before his eyes, he couldn't bear the pain of parting with his best friend. He let out a shrill and unwilling cry. When his best friend died in front of Yi Xian felt a heart-wrenching pain. It was so painful that he couldn't breathe. This was because Lu Bai died for him. If he didn't have Lu Bai's inverse immortal array, he might have died at the hands of those great enemies. Chapter 746. In one's life, one would meet many people. Some were just passers-by, while others were lifelong brothers. Most people wished to have a close friend, but could not. Lu Bai was Yi Xian's close friend. The Kunlun mirror replayed the scene of the past, but it was only a scene. a scene that had already passed 100,000 years ago. Even though Yi Xian was unwilling, he could not reverse time and space to return to the past. The void rippled, and the world gradually became clear again. The Kunlun mirror fell to the ground silently. Only Yi Xian looked bitterly at the grave in front of him. A drop of clear tear quietly streaked across his cheek. Buzz! The inverse immortal array diagram surged out and quietly landed in Yi Xian's hand. He stared blankly at the inverse immortal array diagram in his hand. His body trembled unconsciously, because this item was exchanged with Lu Bai's life. Tears streaked across his cheeks, and finally dripped onto the inverse immortal array diagram. The teardrop spread across the inverse immortal array diagram. Yi Xian's eyes were in a trance. He seemed to see Lu Bai nodding and smiling at him. If I had known that the inverse immortal array diagram was exchanged with your life, why would I, Yi Xian, want it? Yi Xian muttered to himself. The loneliness around him grew stronger. Brother Yi, I have never left. Even though my soul has dissipated, I have always been by your side. Suddenly, a gentle voice quietly sounded out, causing Yi Xian to be stunned on the spot. This was because this voice actually came from the immortal defying diagram. Brother Bai? Yi Xian's body and mind trembled. He held the inverse immortal array diagram tightly in his hand. His mouth trembled, and there was great hope in his eyes. Buzz! The inverse immortal array diagram swayed, and a figure slowly walked out of the inverse immortal array diagram. His clothes were as white as snow, and he was elegant and elegant. His eyes were like stars, and his black hair fell behind his head. He was nodding and smiling at Yi Xian. He had a gentle and elegant aura, and he looked more like a courteous scholar. Brother White Robe. Looking at the person before him, Yi Xian's eyes were lifeless, and he was completely dumbfounded on the spot. After an entire 3 breaths of time, he finally came back to his senses. His mouth trembled as he muttered, as if he didn't dare believe the scene before him. Brother Yi, by the time you see this video, many years will have passed. You must have encountered a great calamity by now. I, Lu Bai, was born extraordinary and arrogant. However, you are the only friend I have in my life. Lu Bai said with a smile, as if he was talking to himself. Brother Bai, what are you talking about? Yi Xian's eyes gradually froze. He finally realized that the Lu Bai in front of him was just an image, and not the real person. This made his joyful eyes gradually dim. Brother Yi, although I am dead, my spirit is indestructible. What little spirit I have left is hidden in the inverse immortal formation diagram. Hoping to see you again in the future. Lu Bai was still talking to himself. Obviously, this was something he left in the inverse immortal formation diagram all those years ago. The inverse immortal formation diagram was born because of our brotherhood. Your tears are the key to opening this video. Brother Yi, when you shed tears, I knew that you must be carrying a heavy burden. Therefore, even though Lu Bai's soul was scattered, his spirit was left in the inverse immortal formation diagram, hoping to fight side by side with you. Lu Bai was still smiling, just like how he looked when his clothes were whiter than snow. Although he wasn't an immortal, he was more like one. He was like a banished immortal who had fallen in the mortal world. Even though he had died 100,000 years ago, his spirit was still indestructible. Brother White Robe, why are you doing this? Yi Xian clenched his fists, and his eyes were slightly red. He understood everything. It turned out that Lu Bai had always been by his side. His indestructible spirit was hidden in the inverse immortal formation diagram. This was also his last resort. The key to opening this video was Yi Xian's tears. Lu Bai knew that Yi Xian was not a person who would cry easily. If Yi Xian shed tears, it would mean that he was in great pain. The last resort he had left behind would also be revealed, and he would face all the obstacles together with Yi Xian. It was embarrassing to say that Yi Xian would actually cry, but it was also because of this that Yi Xian shed a tear for Lu Bai's death. This also activated the inverse immortal formation diagram, allowing Lu Bai's spirit to appear. All of this was within Lu Bai's calculations. He was indeed a peerless genius. Brother Yi, I don't have much time left. This spirit will eventually dissipate, but it contains all of my wisdom. Let's merge as one and face all the obstacles in the future together. Lu Bai smiled warmly at Yi Xian, just like when they sat down and discussed Tao. There was no difference. Although the inverse immortal formation diagram is good, it is not invincible. Unfortunately, I, Lu Bai, am not an immortal. I am just a mortal, and the inverse immortal formation diagram is my limit. But if I, Lu Bai, am talented in formations, coupled with Brother Ye's immortal-like cultivation, I will definitely be able to create a heaven and earth absolute formation. It will also be able to fend off all the enemies for Brother Yi. Lu Bai's smile disappeared. His expression became extremely solemn, and his voice echoed between heaven and earth. Brother White Robe? Looking at Lu Bai in front of him, Yi Xian's body and mind trembled. He was so numb that he could not speak. His mood was even more sorrowful and complicated. Yi Xian did not expect that even though Lu Bai had died 100,000 years ago, he still left behind a method to help him face the future calamity. My spirit is immortal and will exist forever. I hope that Brother Yi can inherit my great Tao of formations. Even though I, Lu Bai, have been dead for countless years, my immortal spirit will always be by Brother Ye's side. I will fight the world with you without any regrets. Buzz! The void swayed and rippled. Lu Bai smiled warmly and walked toward Yi Xian step by step. When he merged with Yi Xian, a light that had never been seen before bloomed around Yi Xian's body. Rumble! The Tongtian earth penetrated the earth. Yi Xian's sorrowful eyes gradually faded away, and his eyes gradually regained their clarity. A spiritual light shot up from the top of his head, stirring up the boundless wind and clouds, and causing the entire human realm to tremble violently. Brother White Robe, today let me, Yi Xian, draw a heaven and earth absolute formation with you. I will let your name resound throughout the three realms, and let everyone in the three realms know that there was once a peerless figure in this world. His name was Lu Bai. Whoosh! 8 gates of life and death, heaven and earth inverted. Yi Xian roared at the sky. A speck of immortal light was shot out by him. The immortal defying formation shot up into the sky and turned into a million miles wide laughter that spanned between heaven and earth. On this day the sun, moon, and stars could not be seen. On this day, the stars shone brightly in the sky. On this day, heaven and earth were the chessboard, and all living things were the chess pieces. On this day, a towering figure stood in the sky. Beneath his feet was the immortal defying formation that spanned a million miles. Chapter 747. The sky was the formation, and the earth was the foundation. Yi Xian walked on top of the immortal defying diagram, and a milky white figure stood side by side with him. Although the milky white figure was extremely blurry, it was emitting a shocking halo. Brother Bai, above the defying immortal is the defying heaven. The 8 gates of life and death can be destroyed. Only then can it be broken and rebuilt, creating the ultimate array of heaven and earth in our hearts. Yi Xian seemed to be talking to himself, but no one knew that he was actually talking to Lu Bai. This was because Lu Bai's spiritual willpower was supporting him. Although Lu Bai was dead, his inextinguishable spirit existed forever. It also gave Yi Xian Lu Bai's understanding of the Tao of array formations. In Yi Xian's heart, Lu Bai had always been by his side. 8 gates of life and death shatter. Bang! 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 With 8 consecutive explosions, the 8 gates of life and death on the defying immortal array diagram exploded without a trace. Wisps of starlight mist spread out and whistled above the defying immortal array diagram. Above the defying immortal is the defying heaven. This array pattern should reverse the great Tao of heaven and earth, and reverse yin and yang in the universe. Only then can it outline the supreme array pattern that has never been seen before. Yi Xian's vast voice sounded as if he was asking for Lu Bai's opinion. As he spoke, the starlight turned into a brush. As the brush danced, extremely complicated array patterns were outlined on the defying immortal array diagram. Yin and yang reverse, the sun and moon exchange. Qian is yin, Kuan is yang. Defying heaven and earth, blood spills over the universe. Puffed! Yi Xian slit his wrist, and a stream of bright red blood sprayed out from his wrist. It turned into a resplendent blood river that stretched across the void. With starlight as the brush and blood essence as the ink, Yi Xian wielded the brush and danced in the universe. The blood-colored patterns were engraved on the defying immortal array diagram. An obscure aura bloomed on the defying immortal array diagram. At this moment, Fatso Huang looked at him in shock. He had already retreated 1,000,000 miles, because Yi Xian's current state was too strange. The array patterns he had drawn made Fatso Huang shudder. 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years. 2,000 years had passed, and Yi Xian did not stop at all. He strolled on the inverse immortal matrix diagram, and Lu Bai's shadow kept him company. When the blood star brush danced in his hand, it caused the surrounding heavens and earth to continuously collapse, and then reform again. Suddenly, Yi Xian stopped in his tracks and turned around to look at Lu Bai. His voice was filled with exhaustion. "Brother White Robe, we were wrong, we were wrong. You and I have spent a total of 2,000 years, but this array has already reached its end. Although the array pattern has been completely drawn, the laws of heaven and earth are still restricting this array. This so-called heaven-defying array is not the array that you and I want." Yi Xian cried out in pain. His face was extremely pale, and traces of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that to create a formation of heaven and earth that was comparable to the cosmic star's formation, Yi Xian would not be able to do it even though he was a pre-saint. What was the ultimate array of heaven and earth? The saints were afraid, and all living things were destroyed. This was the origin of the formation of heaven and earth. The fairy-slaying sword formation, the 12 divine fiends formation, and the cosmic stars formation were the 3 strongest formations of heaven and earth. Although Yi Xian was supported by Lu Bai's spiritual will, understood all of Lu Bai's way of formations, and even inherited Lu Bai's wisdom, it was not easy to create a formation of heaven and earth. How could it be so easy to create a formation of heaven and earth that even the saints were afraid of? 2,000 years of hard work has gone down the drain. Yi Xian frowned and let out a long sigh. The blood star brush in his hand gradually dimmed. 2,000 years was not a long time for Yi Xian. But soon, the ancient demon court would start the myriad demon conference. Moreover, the Hongmeng immortal vapor was in his hands. How could the ancient demon court not kill him? Rumble. Suddenly, just as Yi Xian's will was sinking, Lu Bai's illusory figure straightened beside him. The star blood brush in Yi Xian's hand flew out and landed in his hand. Wang. The star blood brush streaked across the sky, and that blood-red line directly destroyed all the array patterns on the inverse immortal array diagram. Lu Bai was silent. Although he was only a phantom, his eyes were blooming with a spiritual light that had never been seen before, as if he had really come back to life. Qi. Qi. Yi Xian waved his brush in the air, as if he was a god. Blood-colored words appeared in the air, causing Yi Xian to stare blankly at them. Above defying immortals is defying heaven, and above defying heaven is absolute heaven? Absolute heaven. Yi Xian instantly came back to his senses. He abruptly looked at Lu Bai's silhouette, and saw Lu Bai nodding towards him. There was even a gentle smile on the corner of his mouth. It was as elegant and carefree as it was back then. Absolute heaven, seal the earth, bury the past and present. Yi Xian's decadent aura was swept away. He seemed to have understood something at this moment, and a trembling roar came from his mouth. It was also at this moment that Lu Bai's illusory figure became more and more blurred, and the star blood brush in his hand once again landed in Yi Xian's hand. If you want to create a heaven and earth absolute formation, you have to gather an endless amount of fiendish qi of anger and resentment. Only then can you truly create a heaven and earth absolute formation. The anger and resentment of all living beings are boundless, and all living beings have fiendish qi of anger and resentment. Whether it is the fairy-slaying sword formation, or the 12 divine beings killing formation, they are all killing formations. Although the heavenly cycle star formation looks grand and imposing, it is also a matter of gathering the power of billions of stars to kill. Yi Xian held the star blood brush in his hand, and he was trembling and murmuring, as if he had understood the profound meaning of the heaven and earth absolute formation. The star blood brush in his hand shone brightly, and when it broke the sky with a stroke, something extremely terrifying happened. Whoosh! Boundless darkness covered the sky and the earth. Strands of black light that shook both the past and the present were born on the star blood brush. A mouthful of heart's blood essence spurted out from Yi Xian's mouth, and once again gathered to form a long blood-red river. He used the brush to draw the firmament, and the brush danced in the sky. Yi Xian seemed to have fallen into an extremely unfathomable state. He was drawing new runes like a madman. Every time he formed a rune, a bolt of primal chaos lightning would descend and strike his body, causing him to suffer an extremely great torment. Fortunately, Yi Xian's physical body was incomparably strong. Although the chaotic thunderbolt was extremely terrifying, it only caused him some minor injuries. He completely ignored the lightning strikes and continued to draw new formation patterns with his brush. Thunderbolts streaked across the sky, and fiendish qi whistled through the heavens and the earth. Yi Xian was like a god and a devil, and there were chaotic light beams permeating his body. However, his face was getting paler and paler. It was obvious that drawing the heaven and earth absolute formation was exhausting him both mentally and physically. 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 3,000 years, 5,000 years. This time, drawing new formation patterns took Yi Xian 5,000 years. It was also at the 5,000th year that Yi Xian's crazed state suddenly came to a halt. His entire body froze on the spot with the brush in his hand. This was because this new formation pattern only lacked the final stroke. If he succeeded, there would be a fourth heaven and earth absolute formation in the world. However, if he failed, then Yi Xian would have wasted 7,000 years of his time. This final stroke was too important. This was because a single misstep could very well ruin all of Yi Xian's efforts. 7,000 years was not a problem for Yi Xian. If he could draw the heaven and earth absolute formation, even if it took 70,000 or 700,000 years, Yi Xian would not feel that it was a pity. However, Yi Xian had exhausted all of his efforts in these 7,000 years. Regardless of whether it was his essence, qi, or spirit, they had all been raised to the peak. Even if he was given another chance, he would not be able to enter this unfathomable state again, let alone draw the heaven and earth absolute formation in front of him. Brother Bai, how should I put down this final stroke? At this final juncture, Yi Xian's face was haggard and blood was slowly flowing out from the corner of his mouth. He solemnly looked at Lu Bai's disappearing shadow and spoke in an extremely heavy voice. Chapter 748. Silence, a soundless silence. Yi Xian held the brush silently, his eyes slightly closed at this moment. Lu Bai's shadow also gradually dissipated, but an obscure aura was born between the two, causing the heavens and earth to become extremely stagnant. Lu Bai was just a spiritual will. He had no thoughts, nor any emotional fluctuations. There was only a wisp of Lu Bai's obsession when he was alive, an undying obsession. This obsession was born for Yi Xian, and today, it might be destroyed because of Yi Xian. At this moment, the heavens and earth were silent. Time seemed to stop at this moment, and space also seemed to be frozen at this moment. Yi Xian held the brush and stood on the inverse immortal formation diagram. His heavy expression gradually relaxed, and it was as if he had completely let go of himself at this moment. His thoughts were in a trance. 10,000 years passed in a glance, or hundreds of twists and turns. He looked back to the past. Memories, sad memories. Yi Xian's thoughts drifted, and the scene of Lu Bai forging the inverse immortal formation diagram in the past constantly flashed across his mind. He worked hard, forgot to eat and sleep, and didn't sleep or rest for 400 years. These scenes were firmly engraved in Yi Xian's memory. If the inverse immortal formation diagram can be completed, it will be of help to Brother Yi. Even if I, Lu Bai, die, my relationship with Brother Yi is like the sky. Even if I don't exist in this world, my undying will always be by his side. Lu Bai's words in the past vaguely echoed in Yi Xian's ears. A brilliant smile gradually appeared on Yi Xian's lips, and his face gradually revealed a look of reminiscence. 100,000 years ago, at the bottom of the clear pool in the bottomless abyss, Lu Bai and Yi Xian stood facing each other. Brother Yi, we may not meet again in the future, but I hope that Brother Yi will remember that you still have a close friend in the human world. Even if Lu Bai falls in the human world in the future, I will definitely leave a big gift for Brother Yi. That year Yi Xian didn't look back. He strolled out of the valley. Although their feelings for each other seemed as calm as water, they were deeply engraved in their bones and hearts. They had become close friends. For some people, even if they knew each other for a lifetime, it would only be a nodding acquaintance. But for some people, even if they had known each other for 3 years, they would be friends for life. Yi Xian opened his eyes, and a bright light flickered in his eyes. He looked at Lu Bai, who was about to dissipate. Although he knew that Lu Bai was only a spiritual will, this was enough. Some people were alive, but they were already dead. Some people were dead, but they were still alive. In Yi Xian's heart, Lu Bai had never died. Lu Bai had always lived in his heart. He would carry Lu Bai's undying will and continue to move forward. Brother Yi, let's finish this last stroke together. Lu Bai was smiling at him, and Lu Bai's gentle voice sounded in Yi Xian's ears. It was just like the season when the autumn leaves withered, when a figure dressed in snow-white clothes smiled at him. All right, let me and Brother White robe right together and create this unparalleled heaven and earth absolute formation. Yi Xian's voice was powerful and resonating as his entire body erupted with a light that reached the heavens. Brother Bai, come. Yi Xian laughed wildly. Lu Bai's shadow slowly walked toward him until the two of them completely merged. The Tongtian light shook the sky, and the blood star brush in Yi Xian's hand buzzed and trembled. Life extinguishing. All 8 gates open. Yi Xian stood in the sky. He held the brush and pointed at the immortal defying formation diagram. His body bloomed with unparalleled light. Lu Bai stood behind him and pointed at the immortal defying formation diagram with him. Rumble. Heaven and earth were in chaos, and the sound of thunder was eternal. Bolts of chaotic divine lightning flashed in the sky, and heavenly fire burned fiercely. The water of the 9 heavens poured down, and the world became extremely illusory, presenting an extremely terrifying scene. This stroke shocked even gods and ghosts. This stroke made ghosts cry and gods howl. This stroke was earth-shattering. Bang! 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 It was as if the sea of stars was churning, as if the vast universe was shaking. Suddenly 9 explosive sounds came from heaven and earth, and an extremely terrifying thing happened. The million-mile immortal defying formation diagram shone, and the 8 gates appeared one after another. The heavens and earth were shaking, and the sound of ghosts crying and gods howling came from the void. It made one's soul feel like it was about to shatter. Life and death vanish, all ages return to ruins. Buzz! The 8 gates buzzed and rotated, and waves of fiendish aura erupted, filling the entire world in an instant. The entire human world was shaking violently at this moment, and the space-time here was collapsing inch by inch. It was as if the entire human world was going to collapse because of the formation's appearance. The fiendish aura was torrential, and the gods and ghosts were shocked. All living things were buried, and the heavens and earth retreated. The million-mile immortal defying formation diagram was shaking, and the void of the heavens was filled with sorrowful wails. The grand and mysterious chanting of sutras rang out, and an aura of nirvana returning to ruins circulated between heaven and earth. At this point, there were no more immortal defying formation diagrams in the world. There was only the heaven and earth ultimate formation before them. Above the heavens, in the void, the star blood brush in Yi Xian's hand dissipated, and a mouthful of fresh blood spurted out from his mouth. His face was a little haggard, and there was an extreme fatigue on his face. However, his eyes were unprecedentedly bright, and contained an incomprehensible excitement. Brother Bai, we did it, Yi Xian said with a trembling voice. Lu Bai's illusory figure smiled warmly, and a soft voice rang out at this moment. Brother Yi, even though Lu Bai has passed away for many years, you must believe that I have always been by your side. You have never fought alone. Bam! Lu Bai's illusory figure turned into light spots, and disappeared with the wind between heaven and earth. However, Yi Xian's eyes were still blurry, and he seemed to see Lu Bai smiling at him from the heavens. Huff! A turbid qi was spat out from Yi Xian's mouth. He looked around the world, but he could no longer find any trace of Lu Bai. The only thing he could see were the 8 gates that were humming and rotating above the Immortal defying formation diagram, releasing an unprecedented baleful qi. This formation was created for both of us. Let's call it the Chaos Heaven Terminating Formation. Yi Xian muttered to himself, and his eyes shone with a sharp light. He wanted to bring this formation back to the Celestial Court, because this formation was his and Lu Bai's blood, sweat, and tears. He wanted to use this formation to fight to the death with the ancient demon court. The Chaos Heaven terminating ruins, Nirvana returning to ruins, all spirits dying, reincarnation without a trace. This was the profound meaning of the Chaos Heaven terminating formation, and also the proof of the love between Yi Xian and Lu Bai. Under the Chaos Heaven terminating formation, all living things would be destroyed, and no one would be able to escape from this chaotic calamity. From now on, there would no longer be any immortal defying formation diagrams in the world, and there would only be this Chaos Heaven terminating formation. Yi Xian also wanted to let everyone know that other than the 3 ultimate formations of heaven and earth, a 4th ultimate formation of heaven and earth was about to appear. And the person who created this Chaos Heaven terminating formation was none other than that peerless genius Lu Bai. Keep. Yi Xian's fingers were like shuttles, and when his gigantic palm reached out, the Chaos Heaven terminating formation hummed. Instantly, it turned into a 3-inch formation diagram, and was kept by Yi Xian. Chapter 749. The small primal chaos absolute heaven formation floated in Yi Xian's palm, but it caused the surrounding space to faintly collapse. The blood-colored lines on the formation caused one's soul to be sucked in with just a glance, and it was filled with a speechless terror that Yi Xian stood in the sky with his hands behind his back. The absolute chaos formation floated in front of him, but Yi Xian did not look at the formation again. His excitement had completely calmed down. Although he had created the absolute chaos formation, Yi Xian did not feel happy at all. There was only a faint sense of disappointment, because Lu Bai was the eternal pain in his heart. Mr. Fatso Huang rode a cloud and quietly appeared behind Yi Xian. He had waited for 7,000 years, and he had seen everything. He wanted to comfort Yi Xian, but he did not know how to say it. After dozens of breaths, Yi Xian finally came back to his senses and murmured, "Fatso Huang, how much time do we have before the Myriad Demon Conference begins?" "Mister, there are still 2,500 years before the Myriad Demon Conference begins." Fatso Huang did not dare to be negligent, and replied with a bow. "It's time to go back. Although the Absolute Chaos Formation has been created, the formation's Absolute Chaos Formation is extremely fierce. To fully display the formation's power, the formation's materials need to be gathered. 2,000 years should be enough." Yi Xian's voice turned cold. He was eager to return home. He wanted to complete the Absolute Chaos Formation before the Myriad Demon Conference began. He wanted to give Donghuang Tai and Dijun a huge surprise. "Brother Bai Yi, I will let your name resound throughout the 3 realms. This Absolute Chaos Formation is the beginning." Yi Xian's voice was resolute as a strand of ferocious light flashed past his eyes. A strand of unfathomable killing intent flashed past his eyes, and it proved that a terrifying calamity was about to befall the 3 dimensions in the near future. The Heaven and Earth Ultimate Formation could destroy the Heaven and Earth. If the ancient Demon Court and the Heaven Court were to fight, the collision of the 2 ultimate formations would shatter the Heaven and Earth. This was a battle that could destroy the Heaven and Earth, an unprecedented battle. A sea of blood flowed as the heavens and earth were annihilated. Yi Xian's face was malevolent and vicious. Anyone who dared to stop him would die. What great tribulation of heaven and earth! What immeasurable tribulation! Yi Xian, will start all of this. I want to see how you Donghuang Tai will destroy the celestial court." Yi Xian said coldly as killing intent lingered around his body. He did not care what calamity would befall the world after this battle began, because he only wanted to destroy the ancient Fey court. Fatso Huang's expression changed slightly as he looked at Yi Xian's cold aura. He had followed Yi Xian for more than 100,000 years, and he knew Yi Xian's temperament too well. A calamity of heaven and earth was unavoidable. However, Fatso Huang was not a kind person. Even if the world fell and all living things died, it had nothing to do with him. This was because his only belief in life was Yi Xian. Even if a saint blocked his way, he would follow Yi Xian unswervingly. Let's go, Yi Xian said softly. The absolute chaos formation was stored in his Sumeru space and disappeared when he took a step out. Fatso Huang quickly followed. Buzz! The passage in reverse opened. As Yi Xian and Fatso Huang entered the passage, the two went straight back to the Earth Immortal realm. However, a calamity was quietly brewing. The 33rd layer of the Celestial Court. Thousands of rays of auspicious chi shone resplendently. Cranes danced, clouds drifted, and the southern heavenly gate towered majestically. From time to time, celestial soldiers and generals patrolled by, proving that the 33rd layer of the Celestial Court was operating normally. No one came to the Celestial Court to cause trouble because Yi Xian had disappeared for 7,000 years. After all, there were several quasi-saints overseeing the Celestial Court. Although everyone had heard that the primordial violet vapor was in Yi Xian's hands, these quasi-saints did not dare to probe too much without confirmation. Dong dong dong. On this day, 81 consecutive bell tolls came from the Celestial Court. This also caused the immortals of the Celestial Court to rush to the Lingxiao Hall. Clearly, something big was about to happen. Lingxiao Hall. Kong Xian and Kuanpeng stood on both sides. Taishang Laojun held a horsetail whisk. The Demon King stood on both sides of the hall. In the center, Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back, looking down at the Demon Kings. At this moment, the Celestial Court was slightly desolate. The departure of the immortals of the Jia sect, and half of the Demon Kings, was a great loss to the Celestial Court. If not for the sky-swallowing toad and the others' loyalty to Yi Xian, the huge Celestial Court would have been empty. Today, I have called everyone to the Lingxiao Hall for a meeting, because I have a few important matters to announce. Yi Xian's voice was very calm, so calm that there were no ripples. Celestial Emperor, please speak. Venus Taibai walked out and bowed to Yi Xian. The first thing is to open up the Peach Garden and bestow it to the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. Raise their cultivation bases at all costs. The second thing is that I will open up the Heavenly Emperor's treasury. Be it divine abilities, secret arts, pills or weapons, I will bestow upon you anything that can raise the cultivation bases of the Heavenly Court's troops. As Yi Xian's words fell, all the Demon Kings present were shocked. Some of the celestial soldiers and generals guarding the Lingxiao Hall breathed heavily. Clearly, everyone was shocked by Yi Xian's decision. Celestial Emperor, you can't do this. The Peach Garden and the Celestial Emperor's treasury are the foundation of the Celestial Court. If you open them all, the Celestial Court's foundation will be depleted. This? Venus Taibai's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly tried to dissuade Yi Xian. But before he could finish, Yi Xian waved his hand and interrupted. The ancient demon court is about to start the Myriad Demon Conference. The Celestial Court will eventually fight the ancient demon court. If the Celestial Court is destroyed, the Peach Garden and the Celestial Emperor's treasury will be useless. You don't have to say any more. Yes, this old subject obeys. Venus Taibai bowed and hurriedly retreated. Clearly, Yi Xian's words made sense. If the Celestial Court was destroyed by the ancient demon court, the Peach Garden and the Celestial Emperor's treasury would become the ancient demon court's property. It would be better to use them to increase the strength of the Celestial Court. This was also a decision to cut off all means of retreat. Sky-devouring toad. Yi Xian suddenly looked at him. I'm here. The sky-devouring toad did not dare to be negligent. He quickly walked out and bowed to Yi Xian. I want you to do the third matter personally. Yi Xian suddenly threw out a jade slip and got the sky-devouring toad to catch it. He sank his consciousness into it and read the information in the jade slip. This jade slip contains the array formation materials I need. The The Celestial Court still has more than half of these array formation materials, but there is a small portion that the Celestial Court does not have. You need to gather all these array formation materials within 1,000 years. No matter what method you use, even if you burn, kill, and plunder, you have to complete this mission, Yi Xian said calmly. Yes, master. The sky-devouring toad replied solemnly. Then, it bid farewell to Yi Xian. Clearly, it wanted to search for the array formation materials as soon as possible. Report. Suddenly, there was a flurry of footsteps. A heavenly general rushed into the Lingxiao Hall. His face was pale. Reporting to the Celestial Emperor, the ancient demon court has sent an envoy. He is waiting outside the hall. He said that he is here on the orders of the demon race's Celestial Emperor, Eastern Emperor Tai, to deliver an invitation to the Myriad Demon Conference. The heavenly general said with a trembling voice. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.